Joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for your patience. We will reconvene to open session at 5:41. The board took no reportable action in closed session, and we will need a motion on student disciplinary cases.
I'll move to approve student disciplinary cases 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23 as recommended.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote.
And if I may, Mrs. Ham, on the copy that we have, there is no 17, but we did report on a 17. So it was included in the motion.
Thank you. Mrs. Rohrbach, it's stated in the item, but not in the final resolution, also number 17.
It's in the title of it.
Yes.
It's just not in the recommendation, so
Okay.
I'll fix that.
Okay, thank you. That passes 5-0. Thank you. At this time, if we can stand for the pledge, please. Mrs. Pickle, will you please lead us?
Everyone.
Ready, begin?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Second?
Call for the vote. And that also passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to item number 8, election of officers. The governing board shall elect a president from its members and appoint Superintendent Alan Peterson as secretary to the board.
As the current president, Mrs. Ham, would you be interested in serving a second year?
I am willing to do that, yes.
Then I would make a motion to elect Mrs. Ham president.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. Now we'll move to 8.2, and the governing board shall elect a vice president from its members.
Is Mrs. Jayasinga interested in a second year?
I'd be honored to. Continue.
Then I will make the motion to elect Mrs. Jayasinga vice president.
I'll second that motion.
And call for the vote. Congratulations, Trustee Jayasinga. You have unanimously been selected to continue as Vice President. Okay. And at this point, we need to elect a clerk.
Mrs. Pickle, are you willing to serve as a second term as clerk for the board?
Yes, I would be willing to, unless there's somebody else who has an interest.
I will make a motion to have Mrs. Pickle clerk for another year.
I second that motion.
Call for the vote. And with a 5-0 vote, Mrs. Pickle will continue as our clerk. Thank you, everybody. I know it's a little awkward, but it's also really helpful to have traction. And I think Tiffany served 2 years, did an excellent job as president, and I'm trying to keep up. So moving right along, Mr. Jolly, we are excited to have you come forward and present the student showcase.
So good evening. Congratulations on your positions, board. President Ham, trustees, Superintendent Peterson, and cabinet, and Ms. Warback. My name, as she mentioned, is Charles Jolly, principal here at Livingston High School. We're very excited today to showcase the work that we've done working towards our maxims and specifically student communication skills. So I'll share with you guys what our maxims are. So our maxims are: we create, we build, and we share. These are aligned to the 4 C's, which we know are the skills that employers are looking for, colleges are looking for, and that just general success in life during and after high school. So that is what our work has been aligned for a while here at Livingston High School towards these. However, this year I thought it was important to highlight the specific work and the process that we're taking to teach our students this and give them the opportunity to further develop these skills. So this year, this is our instructional pack focus and our plan for the year in terms of what are we having teachers look at. This was kind of born out of some work that we reflected on over the years, and especially last year. And particularly in the spring, I had the pleasure and opportunity to go to a conference on data, what we can do with data and how that can help drive discussions around collaboration and things that we want to work on that we think are important. So we started the year with cell phones, a stoplight system. So we started out with across the board, everyone's using this cell phone stoplight system. So I know other schools have presented on that as well already this year and talked about it. And part of it, what made it different for us is that we chose to only really talk about that in the month of August. So we wanted to start the year off on a good foot and collect little pieces of data from students and from teachers about cell phone usage. So that had a data piece. It was part of a collaboration. We talked about opening and closing routines. The reason for that is it was based in the work we've been doing around social emotional learning. And so those are key pieces. Again, beginning of the year, we're establishing relationships, and we wanted to make sure that that was important, that kids knew that they had a welcome atmosphere when they came in. Again, little pieces of data that we collected about that. And then what tonight's focus will be is on PB Legs. So if you notice, PB Legs is a specific strategy, communication strategy for giving a presentation or in general just communicating to others. And so that's what we're going to talk about. But we built in December, you notice isn't there. That's because it was reflection. And we had our students focus on, our instructional leadership team created a reflection document on our signature assignments, which are aligned to this. We then move into, in the spring, I'm looking forward to our continued work in this process. So again, how did we choose these things? Because we said we've been working towards it for a while, and like we said, it was very important. But it was also through using data. So panorama data, the last 2.5 years that we've had the data, is shown sort of consistent reasons for us to choose these focus. So students feel they have great connections with staff. There's adults on campus that care about them and they can go to if they need help. But they do We want to continue to work towards reaching 100% as high as we can. Sense of belonging, that sort of thing. Those are the pieces of data we pulled out of Panorama specifically. We use student surveys, focus groups, staff input, and then our instructional leadership team and our leadership team work together to do planning. And then, of course, these, as instructional focus, are also just naturally aligned with our maxims. So I'm going to introduce one of our instructional leadership team members, Mrs. Buddy.
Hello, my name is Miss Buddy, Danielle Buddy. I am one of the 8 teachers who are part of the instructional leadership team. Our job is to help create professional development opportunities for our teachers here on campus. We are going to curate resources that specifically are going to help each teacher fit what we want from our students into their curriculum, because not every teacher is going to teach the same things. They don't have the same strategies, and so we try and make flexible resources for each teacher that will meet the needs of their students in their classrooms. We also offer a chance for teachers to come in and see those strategies being modeled. So each of us have a different way that we present it, especially for PV legs. You know, some teachers may see it and think, I have to teach this entire strategy. And so our job is to show them you can actually just focus on one thing. And so our students are going to talk to that and see, you know, some teachers really focus on eye contact, or some of them focus on voice or hand gestures or things like that. And so our job is to help by provide models for those strategies in our classrooms. And then obviously we are the leads for instructional packs, so we put together presentations for them on a specific Wednesday during our collaboration time, and that's where we're going to present a lot of our materials. And Rebecca is going to talk to you guys about our monthly schedule.
Hi, so my name is Rebecca Jackson, and I'm the instructional coach here at Livingston High School. Nice to see you guys tonight. So when the ILT is in charge of those packs, what that looks like is we are on a monthly schedule. We try to make sure that this is the structure we follow, although sometimes weeks get weird and we need to jump around. We have a holiday, stuff like that happens. But in general, we start the month with a faculty meeting where we talk about what the focus will be for the next month or two. And then we move into pack meetings the following Wednesday. These are all before school. These are our collaboration meetings. And those groups that Danielle just showed you on the previous slide are heterogeneous groups. So we have a bunch of cross sort of opportunities for pollination and ideas with our teachers, which is kind of an awesome thing. The next week, they'll have a department meeting where they'll be able to go over the way that in the English department in particular, let's say, or the math department, how they're implementing the various strategies. So it is sort of a mix of a little bit with a heterogeneous group, a little bit with your department group, and the teachers should continue trying out the strategy throughout that time. We have small data collection pieces, and then they should bring that data, they should bring that feedback to their, again, the subject department meetings, which we are using as sort of a way to strengthen that. We still want the teachers to work in their department, but they work. After that, we will go into the cycle again. We're following each of our big pictures on the previous slide, or 2 slides previous, where it's like we're focusing on cell phones, opening and closing routines, PB legs, and so on. For the instructional strategies, we're spending about 2 months on each of those. So then we go through this structure again. Although we don't re-instruct on the strategy, we do get a chance to go deeper into it, talk about what isn't working and then what is working. And the teachers are an amazing group that really support each other and have a lot of really interesting ideas to talk about. I love it when a math teacher has a great idea for a CTE teacher. And we see that a lot in our groups.
So again, that really leads into, why did we choose this to talk about? We're talking about a process that ultimately impacts student learning. And in those meetings, teachers were sharing that they love that they feel a part of a we, that it's more people who are working on the same thing. Everybody across the whole site is working on the same types of instructional strategy or focus. And so it's important then, and then also they were sharing in those meetings that, students were sharing, hey, we noticed that we're all kind of doing this. And like, yes, that's right, we're all doing it. So we did think, I need to get some more of this information. I want to ask students about, how do they know about the maxims? So this was a check-in survey that went out a couple weeks ago. And basically, this is good feedback for us. So we know that students know what our outcomes for students are. So we noticed we have about 70% of kids do know what the maxims are and understand what they are. There's, again, some that don't. And so that's a good area, good information for us to know. That means we need to talk about it more. So we have posters everywhere. I know teachers talk about it in classrooms, but maybe we need to do more to talk about it and maybe make sure we know what that means. So again, data drives what we do. One of the things then, because of talking to students in classrooms and seeing them in classroom speaking and then just how they informally shared, we thought, let's go ahead and ask the question. Do you think, students, that it's helpful that your teachers are working on this? And did this school-wide implementation of a speaking strategy help you? And so we noticed, we have a 74% yes in some way. So there's, actually it's even higher than that, I'm sorry, about 80. So this is good, that's exciting. That is what happens when people work together, when we have a consistent focus, when we're all working on the same thing. And again, we're starting it this year, we're gonna continue and I'll talk about next steps, but I think it's more important to look at more things that students said. So here is actual more open-ended questions, what responses from students. So help me learn to present, help me understand it. Some of them mentioned specific teachers and things that they worked on when they did the PV Leg strategy, and then just how it helped them improve. And so again, I'm more excited to have you guys listen to our students. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass them to Ms. Betty, who will introduce our student.
So the students that we have today, Celeste Amador, we have Fatima Davalos, and we have Angel Bassi, and they're going to speak on behalf of themselves and their experiences, but also the experiences of their peers.
Good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Celeste Amador, and I am a junior here at Livingston High School. And well, this is actually my first year ever hearing about PV Legs. Previous years, yes, I have done a couple of activities where I do have to talk in front of people, but I have never had necessarily a guide like PV Legs has given me. And when I first heard about PV Legs, it was actually in my AP Spanish language class. And when I first heard it, I was like, okay, I could do this, but I'm like, I don't know about in Spanish though. But thankfully, with Senora Moran's help, I was able to bring myself to a new sort of level when it comes to talking in front of a crowd. And previously, I have done a lot of that, like mentioned before. For example, in 8th grade, I did a graduation speech in front of my whole class and parents. So that was a really cool experience. And I honestly wish I could have had that sort of guide with PV Legs, because I know if I would have had a knowledge on that, or I guess you could say I would have had practice with that, I know I could have done a better job. And well, PV Legs is something that every classroom should at least have an introduction to, because I know there are students out there who really want to be in front of a crowd and just speak to whatever their heart's desires. But I understand that, you know, they don't have that sort of guide in which we can help enforce that, because PV Legs is really beneficial and it can really change students' lives, especially with confidence, because as we all know, this generation is going through some struggles right now. And I'm sure by helping them with their boost of confidence, they can achieve a lot more. Because when you're standing in front of a crowd or in front of a room full of like 5 to 2 people, you feel that sort of power that you could, that you could be able to speak your heart out and, let's say, defend or achieve those goals that you want with using PV Legs. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fatima Davalos. I'm also a junior here at Livingston High School. For me, it's also my first year hearing about PV Legs, but I think it is absolutely amazing that it's being brought into the light, because it's an amazing guiding source for everybody. Public speaking is such a necessary skill for everybody to have, and oftentimes students don't really realize how important it is for you to be able to get in front of a crowd and be able to communicate and form that connection, and for you to be able to understand what I'm trying to get across. And when I first learned about public speaking, it was my freshman year of high school. All throughout middle school, I was a very shy kid. I didn't like to do any of this. If you would have told me I would have been presenting in front of a crowd like I am right now, I would have told you were joking. There was absolutely no way I was going to be able to do something like this. But I started to really get out of my comfort zone, and it all was because of Miss Buddy. She was the one that introduced me to it, and she taught me how to really showcase my voice, how to use hand gestures, and how to go at a steady speed and make sure you guys understand the message that I'm trying to tell you guys. And it wasn't through PV Legs, but now it is. It's like now we have a name for it. This is what's going to help students become better in the future because it's an extremely necessary skill that everybody needs to have. And now it serves as a guide for students because when you tell us for assignments that we need to do presentations or talk in front of a crowd, that gets really scary. And it almost seems like we're getting thrown into a little bit blindly. But now with PB Legs, you have a guide and you don't feel as scared anymore. And for those people who are a little bit shy about speaking out and staring in front of a crowd and talking, because that is very terrifying, now they have a system and they can form confidence like Celeste mentioned earlier. And to us, it really helps us. In the future now, with the amount of practice we're getting, it's gonna be a piece of cake. For students here now at Livingston High School, once they get a career and you form your life, when you say you're gonna speak in front of a crowd, it's not gonna be as scary because now we've done this before, we know how to do it, we know what to expect. So we're not being thrown into it completely blinded. And I think that's really, really important and necessary because I know Livingston High School does focus a lot on teaching us skills for the future, and this is just like one step ahead. A step ahead of the game, and it really does help us more than they realize it. It helps build our confidence and just guides us so we're not as terrifying as doing it. Not only that, but through a system of PV Legs, I noticed that when I'm presenting, I take in mind that I have to maybe talk a little bit slower or make a little bit more poise and talk a little bit more with emotion so I don't bore you guys. And I notice in presentations, my classmates are also more intrigued into what I'm saying because they're not zoning out or spacing out. They're actually listening to what I'm saying and what I'm presenting about. So that's my experience with PV Legs. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Angel Bassi, and I'm a sophomore at Livingston High School. So PB Legs was first introduced to me this year, and I believe Celeste and Fatima did overall talk about what PB Legs truly is. However, one thing I believe that they didn't mention is that PB Legs help students well articulate their thoughts. Yes, PB Legs has helped us become more confident and more comfortable in front of a crowd, but one thing I know I struggle with is that I'm not able to articulate my thoughts in an effective and efficient manner. So by having a criteria such as PV Legs and understanding what the ideal public speaker looks like and what the ideal presentation looks like, I have been able to do things like this. If you told me my freshman year that I'd be in front of a board of adults talking about something, I wouldn't believe you. Truth to be told, growing up, I've always been an extremely nervous person. I used to be an extremely loud speaker, and I would talk with my hands far too much. By understanding proper gestures and understanding understanding how quickly I should talk or how slowly I should talk, PV Legs has helped me be able to present in a manner that is effective and efficient, and also give a presentation that does not bore people. I know in classes, I've noticed that a lot of my classmates do struggle with self-confidence and overall struggle to give a presentation in front of the class. I've noticed that a lot of my peers have been able to understand what the ideal public speaker is, and then later be able to go up in front of a group of people and just talk without stuttering, without being nervous, and overall feeling more confident. PV Legs is a skill that I know I will carry into my adult life, and a skill that my peers can utilize further in their adult life. I believe PV Legs is beneficial and helps us become adults who are able to effectively articulate our thoughts and effectively communicate. Thank you.
Awesome. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you so much. Again, you say, why would we choose something like this? Well, it's multiple reasons. You notice the personal feelings, the confidence, the skills. It's not necessarily just public speaking. We've also told students, It could be just when you're going and you have a one-on-one conversation, you're doing customer service. Well, you can still use PV Legs in that interaction. So I just want to, can you guys give them a round of applause again? You guys did a great job. And students really express, much better than having an adult stand up here and tell you what it's about. But thank you guys. So what are we going to do next? Well, this is important. These skills matter now and in the future. So it's not going to go away. We're going to maintain the focus and continue, collecting data. Where can we improve? What do students say? What do staff say? What do community members say? Keep listening and just refining. So that's what we'll be doing. So thank you, guys. And thank you to everybody, too, that spoke tonight.
Mr. Jolly and staff, you guys are doing a great job with that. The girls, the ladies, speaking, they're not only speaking in public, but with no notes. And, the three of them, it really seemed like they were speaking from the heart as to what they're learning. So a great job with that. Great job, ladies.
Yeah, any questions? All right.
No questions, but I did have I had a comment. Most adults, myself included, get very nervous speaking in front of crowds, especially large crowds. And ladies, you all were so articulate and poised. The future is definitely bright, and I think this community is going to be better for it. So, well done.
I just want to reiterate what Mrs. Jayasinka said. You guys did a fantastic job, and it is an excellent skill, and you will be leaps and bounds ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
You're up again, Mr. Jolly.
All right. Good evening again. So my principal's report tonight will be focused on our progress on MTSS goals. So one of the biggest things is recognizing students. So we've made quite a lot of progress being intentional and thoughtful about all the different ways that we can recognize students. So we have goals of the week. We have, I put data up there so we can see the numbers. A goal, this is part of our LCAP plan, part of our superintendent goal, part of our school goal, obviously. It's good for kids. It's good for everybody in the culture. So we recognize students also monthly. Live gold traits, so pride, mental toughness, academic responsibility. You can see all the different things there, leadership, integrity. And so we have monthly students who are awarded for those traits. We've also been doing attendance and tardy incentives, so we're up to at least 1,000 students so far who have been recognized by an early out. We just want to reward and recognize, you come to class every day on time, and that is awesome. And you're in school every day like you need to be. So we also have 3 athletic seasonal awards, which that's an awesome event that Mr. Winton, our athletics director, puts on. And our coaches choose students who've represented what it means to be an excellent athlete, a good teammate, and show the spirit of Livingston High School. Our fall awards night we held about 3 weeks ago. We recognize certain areas in this one. We realize there's so many things we can look at, so let's just maybe pick a few, and then we will have another awards in January, and we're excited for that. But what we recognize so far were just students who had GPAs, excellent GPAs, those who were proficient in math, and we had 384 students recognized for having a 3.5 GPA or higher in the first quarter. 61 students met or exceeded the spring math SBAC, and then 38 students had perfect attendance in the first quarter. So we thought really important to recognize them. Things that we're going to continue to recognize, areas of recognition, are improvement or progress. And so nominations come from our intervention coordinator. We'll also gather from other folks who work with students who may not have that 3.5 GPA, but they've made progress. So it could be in attendance, it could be in grades, it could be behavior. Whatever that is, making a goal, reaching it, and noticing it. So, and then we also plan to recognize students for reclassification, English proficiency, attendance again, because attendance is huge, GPA, and again, the character awards. One of the questions is, these are some questions that we had, right, to think about and work together as team or multiple teams. So how do we identify tier 2 students? So in academics, we have a few different measures that are used. We have the reading inventory that all students take. We have math benchmarks and then math growth measures, and of course, transcript reviews. We use that information then to choose to place students into intervention tier 2 classes, such as Math 180, Read 180. Maybe they need to be in academic support or they need a credit recovery. We make referrals to tutorial, and also we held SST meetings with a team to look at how can we help this student. Oftentimes, if a student's not doing well academically, there's a reason, there's something going on that they need additional support in, and when we bring a team together, we can figure out what that is. And then how do we monitor progress? So we have ARIES reports that we run, math growth measures, and then that reading inventory is given regularly in the middle and the end of the year as well. So we're able to see how our students are doing. Attendance, we have our CWA and attendance reports. Earlier this year, I was glad to talk about what our site is doing in terms of reaching students and getting them to school. We do consistently have the highest percentage of students attending, which is awesome. And I think it's part of a team effort. So it wouldn't be that if it weren't for a team effort and people coming together to say, how can we help a student get to school and then engage and get what they need. So lots of home visits. We have, of course, meetings, SART and SARB. Our CWA, who's our Child Welfare and Attendance Liaison, has a case of students that she runs. She collaborates highly with our SRO, our AP, our intervention coordinator, counselors, so it's a group effort. And again, we can look at how that looks through Panorama and ARIES reports. Behavior, we have Panorama and ARIES. And then I wanted to use this moment to invite our intervention coordinator up because he is the person who is providing this intervention. And so, Mr. Chris Kelly.
Good evening. I'm Chris Kelly. I'm the intervention coordinator here at Livingston High School. Yeah, so it's my job essentially to identify as early as possible students that could need some sort of intervention. It starts with recommendations from our feeder schools. We get a list of students who maybe had a track record of struggling in one of those various categories. So we start there. From there, I use Panorama and ARIES to monitor the entire school, every discipline and assertive discipline entry that goes through the school. I look into the student and I look into their grades, I look into their attendance and kind of just be as thorough as I can for every student that might be struggling with any sort of behavior issues on campus. Once we believe they could use some intervention, they get put on my caseload. I do have quite a bit long list of students that I'm monitoring and kind of are potential applicants for that caseload. But from there, depending on what interventions they need, it could be a behavior support plan that we put in place, which we're building quite a few at any given time. I'm also working with students on an individual basis for just check-ins, seeing how things are going, setting short-term and long-term goals for where we'd like to see them work towards. We're also working in small group sessions where we're using the Character Strong Tier 2 curriculum for social emotional skills. One of the things that we're focusing on for the first semester is externalizing emotions, or essentially emotional regulation, since we know that that's where a lot of discipline issues come from. And then second semester, we'll be focusing on internalizing skills and coping with things like stress and anxiety. So a lot of stuff that we're working on. I'm using Panorama to still canvass the school. As we know, issues can crop up throughout the school year. Just because they weren't identified early doesn't mean that they won't need intervention at some point throughout the year. Also including crosstalk with the counselors and any potential SSM referrals that might be necessary with our clinicians here on campus. So it's been going really well. We're still refining our systems as far as the intervention coordinators from throughout the district. Cross-talking, we have a group chat through Google where we share documents and ideas. We meet every Friday on Zoom, and then once a month in person where we, again, we'll work on plans together and share ideas, things that are working. So it's going well, and we are working towards our goals here, and then we'll be giving surveys to kind of progress monitor as we go throughout the year as we work towards those goals.
Right. Thank you. So again, we're using data and referral systems and actually getting to know students, trying to find them ahead of time so that we can intervene before we have something happen that just would affect them. So before there's a behavioral issue, an academic issue, or if there's social emotional issues going on. Our other areas of intervention is we have Wolfpack 9, so that is a Tier 2 intervention in that those are freshman students who were referred through working with our feeder schools, who have either behavior, attendance, grade issues. They were, many of them are 8th grade non-grads. And so we want students to start with the best foot forward and to have attention given to them directly. So we have 3 CTE teachers who rotate and expose kids to the different areas that they have for CTE. They're in a smaller classroom. Our counselors work with them. They have presentations every 2 to 3 weeks with counselors that are specific. And while they're doing that, then the teachers are collaborating and working together to talk about students and figure out what kind of supports they may need and what they're doing, and then communicate that information to counselors and the rest of our teams. And so that's, a lot of this, again, it's interpersonal, it's relational, it matters, it's important. More interventions to mention that are tier 2 just for the counseling department itself are, of course, grade checks. 2 or more Fs require, a counselor conference. Upgrade lab visits, so even last week, our counselors were out visiting the upgrade labs to just check in with students personally. Hey, how are you doing? Where are we going? What are you working on? Again, letting them know that their teacher cares about them, but so do their counselors, and so do other people. We wanted to make sure that you're making progress. Transcript evaluations, of course, that's key at semester. Senior danger notices, again, that's at the end of a high school career. We don't want to see very many of those. But if a student does find themselves in danger, then counselors are at least meeting weekly with those students in the 4th quarter. And then specifically this year, the counseling department, along with Mr. Mesa, our AP guidance, chose to make Wolfpack 9 their tier 2 goal. So that's work through the Hatchings work with counseling. They made a specific goal, and so their goal this year is a reduction of total Fs by 15%. And so these are the ways they're doing it. They have a pre-post survey. Again, those small group lessons I was mentioning, and then lesson topics are time management, study skills, organizational skills. One thing we added this year was an MTSS team. So we've had a group of teachers who are pretty committed to the Nurtured Heart approach. They recently became certified trainers, and they wanted to find ways that they can contribute to school culture and, of course, help intervene. And so it's a natural place to be working through our MTSS umbrella, so academics, grades, attendance, social emotional learning. And so one of the things we were looking at is, for the students that answered on a survey that there isn't an adult that they feel they can connect to, we want to go talk to those students. We also want to look at data in general as a group and then find out what are other ways that we can contribute. And so this team has already done some planning to refresh our relational skills through the Nurtured Heart approach. Again, just relationships being the foundation of everything in education, creating a good space for students to learn. And so again, next steps. It's never done. The work's never done. We always want to do more, get better, work on our system, and see what we can do. So we are going to continue to use Panorama. We're pretty excited about Parsec, just that it's able to dive into areas and pull out nice reports for us to look at. We have other surveys. So again, I gave a survey that was a check-in survey. I'll be giving the same one again to find out how we're doing on reaching our goals. And then, again, finding those other different areas that we can collect information. And then as a team, again, one of the things that we talked about recently that the team is pretty excited about, including our intervention coordinator, is going and talking to the students. So having some system to just check in with students informally. And of course, learn how to have that conversation. Where's the lines? Who do we go for help? Okay, what do we do next? So put that in place and then, again, help more kids. And continue to develop tools and have professional development for the rest of our staff. So that's really it. Again, we're working on systems. These are tier 2. A lot of the stuff that we do, if we do more in tier 1, obviously, tier 2 has less work to do, and they can focus on the students that need more help. So that's really our overall progress. So it's very exciting to be with such dedicated staff. And I should have put their names up here, but if you ask, I can tell you. So any questions for me?
I did have a question. The Wolfpack 9, so the input from the feeder schools, how formal of a formalized process is it?
Yeah, so we get the list. Non-grads are almost always going to be on a list and potentially part of Wolfpack 9. If they don't want to, there could be a conversation with their parent or the counselor. Maybe we don't think we need to be in there, but our approach is that, if you weren't having success in 8th grade, we want to make sure you're successful here, and we want to just make sure you get that additional attention and focus as a freshman coming. grades and attendance, those come from the counselors. So the counselors provide us with a list. So they'll pick our students who have the most need. And so those are the ones that move up towards the top. Students who have IEPs already have a case manager. They have a caseload. They have someone that's their advocate, to focus on them and make a plan for them. So there aren't too many students in Wolfpack 9 who are also with IEPs. So that's, sometimes people are like, oh, let's do even more. It's a case-by-case basis in that situation. But for the most part, they already have someone that's going to provide and make a plan and work with them.
Is Wolfpack 9 only for freshmen?
Yeah, it's only for freshmen.
So at the end of their freshman year, now they're released into the wild.
So that's been a question. We say, how do we measure the success of Wolfpack 9? So that's another reason that the informal surveys will work. I mean, we have the formal things we can pull out. The counseling goal around reducing number of Fs that students have, but also then there's the other social emotional pieces. Like, we want students to be connected to school, to get signed up, be encouraged to become engaged in everything with school. So those are questions on our survey, like, what activities have you already participated in this year? Do you know an adult that you can go to if you needed to ask questions? So those are the type, we're trying to get as focused as possible on those pieces and make that, street data really be more closer how we measure what the success is. So there are the measures we can pull out of Aries, but it's the other ones that require a survey or a conversation.
So how are you tracking on the 15% reduction in Fs?
So we'll find out in January.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're looking at that's a semester goal, and we'll see so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the goal. It's great. What was I gonna ask? I lost my train of thought. It's very helpful information. Thank you. I wanted just to inquire. I think district-wide, it's been shared with us that suspensions and expulsions are down, and typically we see a lot of issues more with freshmen. Have you seen better behavior, less discipline issues with freshmen specifically?
So I think that, we have, I think in general, yeah. I think we have a team. I think freshmen, having this group is helpful. I think also having the intervention coordinator, so that additional adult that's right there focusing all the time on the data and the numbers that come through. I feel like that additional attention is helpful because part of reducing suspensions is, are we going to can we intervene ahead? Will a kid know that they can go to an adult and ask for help before they go and make a bad decision? And then also, when we're in those situations where we're working with a student, often we'll invite Mr. Kelly, for example, or we find the other trusted adult that they share with us. Like, do you mind coming and sitting and sitting with this kid while we talk and while we figure out what are we going to do next? And then, by the way, this is the person you're going to go to. Are you good with that? It's always, one of us, administrators or counselor, whoever else is in the room, but really sort of focusing on that, I think, is key.
How much of the time is the interaction one-on-one versus in a small group?
For the intervention coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
I can let Mr. Kelly. It's twice a week, I believe but I'll let you speak on it.
Yeah, so right now, this is partially the next steps, trying to build the team of teachers to be small group mentors is crucial. Mainly just because, I can't see every single one multiple times a week, so I can usually get to every student at least once a week, either in informal individual check-ins or in our group sessions. So it's usually kind of on a weekly basis. 1 week I'll be focusing on individual check-ins, and the next week we'll be doing our group sessions. So I make pretty consistent contact with my caseload pretty frequently, usually about once a week, depending on their need.
How many students are you working with?
So on my caseload right now, I have about 45. I'm delivering curriculum to about 40 of them. Some students don't like the group session aspect, so it won't work if we force it on them, so we're kind of delivering that curriculum in different ways. And then there are about 15 to 20 that I'm monitoring, so I'll still check in with those students about once a month. It could be attendance, or it could be grades, or behavior, or a combination of those things. Maybe they're trending in the wrong direction, so I kind of check in to see what's going on and can hopefully intervene before it becomes a bigger issue. But yeah, so overall about 65 to 70 students that I'm serving right now, which is why it's important for us to build that team of teachers. So.
Okay, thank you.
How many students do you have in your class of 24? the senior class this year?
I think it's 280.
Oh, 280. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Jolly.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Okay, at this time, we're going to move to the general public comment period. The meeting is recorded. Individuals addressing the board are asked to fill out a speaker card located in the back of the room, complete a blue card to speak to an item not on the agenda, and a yellow card to speak to an item on the agenda. Please return the card to the administrative secretary of the governing board. Individuals addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes each with no more than 20 minutes per topic. During this portion of the agenda, the public is invited to comment on items which are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board of Trustees. The board will take no action at this time but may refer the issue for further consideration. Individuals who wish to comment on agenda items shall be provided an opportunity to comment after the staff report and before the board's consideration of that item. Individuals who cannot wait to address the board when the agenda item is addressed may make their comments at this time. Okay, so at this time, Mr. Brad Haven.
My name is Brad Haven, and for 7 years now I have worked in transportation as a school bus driver. And I want to bring attention to the board tonight the shortage of school bus drivers that we have and how it's affecting our students. I do this because I care. I care about the students I see every day, the students I take to school, take back home, do shuttles. I care about my fellow bus drivers and their careers. I care about the future of what the school bus driver career business can be. Let me give you an example. For the last 60 days, we have 5 mechanics and we have office workers. Every day, a mechanic or an office worker has to fill in a route because we're so short. And we constantly are calling upon them to either do a morning route or an afternoon route, or whatever needs to be done. So that's taking the mechanics away from their job to maintain all the buses we have. It takes office workers out of the office for a responsibility that's not in their job description, but because they happen to have a bus license, they just go do it. Even our trainer, who is responsible for keeping us in compliance, which there's a lot that we have to do each year to stay in compliance. He does a route every day. So that takes him away from his responsibilities. What would happen if these employees were not able or willing to step in? Not every mechanic that you hire in the future may not even have a bus license, or not an office worker may not have a bus license. So there's a huge shortage that's being created getting students to school. And so I would like to address 4 ideas. Number 1, we need to reclassify the school bus drivers to make it a higher paying position so that it attracts good, hardworking people. The certifications that have to happen to a bus driver are many, and it takes a long time to get someone up to speed. The second item would be if someone comes from another district to apply and they have 20 years of experience, hire them at the 20-year experience level, not at the 3-year level, because we would attract a lot more people to come to our district, which we desperately need. The third thing is we need subs, and if you would pay the subs higher, you would attract more subs. And then you might consider offering even a signing bonus to attract people, but there is a desperate need for bus drivers, and it is a concern that I see from my experience, and I think.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay. Then at this time, we will move on to the reports and discussion portion of the agenda. Mrs. Ballinger.
Good evening, President Ham and board members. Tonight, we're going to share with you the Local Control Accountability Plan mid-year update. We are required to provide an update for you, and so we're going to share some of that information tonight. So I'd like to introduce Jeanette McCauley. She works most closely with our LCAP. I want to say she does an excellent job with that. She is currently wrapping up this LCAP cycle and starting to plan for our next LCAP cycle, so you'll probably hear a little more about LCAP this year. But I did want to recognize Jeanette's work in that area.
Thank you, Mrs. Ballinger. Good evening, Board President, Mrs. Ham, and trustees. I am Jeanette McCauley, Program Administrator with Merced Union High School District. All right, excellent. The state of California approved that we do a mid-year report. And so last year we did not have one. 2 years ago we did, due to being in COVID, so they asked us to do a mid-year report. But from here on out, with LCAP, we'll be doing a mid-year report based on data, our expenditures, and as we move forward with our actions and our goals. It's been great following Mr. Jolly and his students and his staff to hear what they had to share as we move forward through our LCAP. Dr. Weimer will be presenting later on the first interim reports, and so this is just a screenshot of what we're looking at this time. So again, the LCAP cycle is a 3-year cycle, and our latest cycle is 21 to 24. So when we did our planning, that was in 2020. And so again, how the cycle goes is we begin planning during the year, and then we approve it in the June board meeting. And so when we are looking at our budget numbers, we get estimates when I present it to you guys in June. So that's where we had 41,102,000. And then right now we'll have our first interim. And so this again is just the LCAP funding. When you'll see Dr. Weimer's first interim, he'll go over the whole LCFF funding, which is a little more than this. And so right now it's estimated that we have gone up $200,000 for our LCAP funding. And again, that will probably change during the next couple interims until we submit it to you guys in June for the annual report. Our estimated actual expenditures to date, not to date, but probably last week, was $24 million. And so it looks like we are on pretty much good pace as we move forward with our spending and our funding. All right, a lot. So this is a summary of just goal 1, which is our college and career ready. And that's more of our nickname. And as Mrs. Ballinger was saying, is we're in our 21, 24, and we're finishing off. And so we started with that goal back in 2021. That cannot change over the cycle. However, our actions and our metrics can. We do have some state required metrics that will stay there throughout. But as Mr. Peterson does his superintendent goals, we have been adding those through our annual reports each year to make sure we are emphasizing not only in our LCAP goals to support what Mr. Peterson and our district needs, but what our students, of course, need. And so back in 2020 was our first year when we moved to the 7-period day, and so that was our main one here. And again, it's to increase the A through G, the AP, classes, CT opportunities, credit recovery, our college credit going opportunities, and also our electives, we don't want to forget that. And then again, our district level supports as we move through. We do provide 2 free vouchers to every student. As we move with CTE, it's pretty great. We have over 35 pathways throughout our district. We have over 131 CTE teachers, 120 CTE courses, and 634 CT sections. So that is all expanded in the last couple of years as we move through this LCAP cycle. And that's just one part. It's talking about CT world. And we have our college and career coming after me today, so they'll talk, of course, a little more what they're doing in that area in the college realm. So again, some descriptions of just more summaries, what we're doing across. As Mr. Jolly was talking about, we're really looking in our tier 2 and 3s. There we go. As we move forward in interventions and supports for our students. And here we're talking more academically when we're looking at this. Metrics, as you guys might know, December 15th is when the state will release our dashboard data. Our CAS scores have been released already. Those aren't embargoed. And we have not improved necessarily in those. We have trickled down again in both English and math. And so again, As we move forward to this next LCAP cycle, we're looking at 24 to 27. And that's kind of MUHSD 2030 plan as we move forward. And we need to know what do we need to do to help support our kids. And so kind of really reflecting upon this data, and it was great what Mr. Jolly was talking about, data, and as we have Amy, Brandy, and Gina come up, we're talking data. So we know where we need to move forward. Now it's bringing in those interventions to help support our kids who do not come to us at grade level. As the student said earlier, our social emotional needs and where we need to get our kids workforce ready. And so this is all a part of where we're moving, of course, with the LCAP as we move with our educational partners to make sure we help our students succeed as we move forward. So another great thing, because right now, we talked about, semester grades, Fs, like right now we're presenting here in December. So in January, we'll get a lot of data for semesters, plus also the dashboard will be released on Friday. And so we do a great job. Stacy Cool, Mrs. Cool does a great job updating our LCAP Explorer, which is on our website, and it keeps up-to-date local measures. And so typically when I pull for the LCAP, I'm pulling from the California State Dashboard and Data Quest as much as I can. Those are what we report through CalPADS to the state. However, we pull a lot from Aries, right, because that's our living data. That's what we see. And so we do keep our LCAP dashboard up to date as much as we can based on the data that matches what we have in our LCAP. As we move forward with Goal 2, or School Climate and Culture, you'll see between Goal 1 and Goal 2, very heavy in our metrics. There's a lot here. Our nutritional services, we had an experience this year, but goes back to last year's LCAP and the previous year, that we had some parents talking about the food. And so Mrs. Tassie had the chance to go to 2 sites, and we have one more site this winter, that we brought in our school site councils, which is parents, staff, and students, and our ELAC parents to the campus during lunchtimes. So they had a chance to see what lunchtime experience was and also taste the food, and walked around and had a chance to talk to the staff and then actually live the lunchtime experience. And we want to make sure we do that at the other sites next year to make sure we keep bringing our parents and our educational partners that opportunity to be involved. Again, that was a concern that was brought up, and so we wanted to make sure that we followed up with those concerns as much as we can to give that opportunity for parents to give feedback and input, and again, experience that opportunity. As you just heard from one of our guests who came up and spoke during the public time, we have the bus, white fleet. We have the vehicles. We have that. It's sometimes the staffing where we need to move to. But the LCAP helps to make sure that we are keeping upgraded on our vehicles. We continue again with reaching out to our educational partners. That's like if we are looking at even CTE, that's our industry partners, our post-secondary partners, but also, of course, always our parents and our families. This is an exciting time of year because 8th graders starting to begin registration. And so when we're looking at two-way communication this next spring, a lot of it sometimes is our new families coming in for the first time to the high school. And it's important that we are there, we're available for them to have any questions or concerns and be able to address those as we move forward. And so that's why this has been added, and of course that was one of the superintendent goals. Again, our school climate, safety, and services. If our kids aren't safe, they're not going to be able to learn in the classroom. And so again, moving forward, you hear with intervention coordinators what they're doing and personalizing those opportunities to work with some of our students who need that one-to-one adult interactions. Our counseling work this year and last year just keeps increasing as they continue to figure out what's best for our school sites. Added a counselor across the board at each site. As we move forward, trying to, college and career, but also that social emotional piece and tying it all together and getting into the classroom and do some lessons. Again, as we move forward, we'll have our SARC coming up, and so then our FIT report will be released, Student Achievement Report Card, and our facility report. Those will be released. And the last one is our special education. We have a couple new goals that were added this last year to make sure we're supporting our program improvement and making sure we are having students in the classroom in the right time with the supports, and also continually giving professional development to our teachers and our staff on that. All right, and again, a lot of our metrics, as I jump through, It's actually pretty exciting. Our California Healthy Kids survey just went out, and that's a big goal 2 one. I didn't mean to jump ahead. And we had over 5,500 students submit the California Healthy Kids surveys this year that will be in our annual report when we get those numbers. We had 629 staff members complete the survey and 762 parent surveys done. And so it'll be exciting when we get those numbers, and that kind of helps us break down participation, safety, and connectiveness to school as we move forward with that. There's a lot. We're doing great things. That's what's really exciting. So as we move forward, and as we move forward with the 24-27 planning, we're also thinking about where we've been and where we need to go. And so we have our college and career ready, goal number 1, our school climate and culture, getting kids involved. I kind of missed that part in goal 2, making sure we have safe facilities. Then we get to our equitable access. And so we have put our MTSS, as Mr. Jolly and I'm sure Mr. Johnson talks about a lot. Those are kind of been in our 1s and 2s. But when we move forward in 24 and 27 planning, we want to balance out our goal 3 and our goal 4. There's a lot of plans that we have to do. One's our WASC accreditation, one's our SIPSA, which is a single plan for student achievement at the sites, and they have to align to our LCAP goals and funding. So we want to make sure as we move forward with our planning, we're reflecting on data always, but really what do we think we need in the next couple of years? And so that's why, again, as we move through this process, educational partners include our students, our families, our community, our staff, as we plan to move forward with this. Again, typically our equitable access is where we put our low socioeconomic, which is a high percentage in our district, about 75%. We have our English learners, and we have our foster youth. State of California will be moving to looking at what are we doing for long-term English learners, which means students who are English learners for over 6 years in the system, and what are we doing for those students to make sure we move forward. So again, looking at what we've done and making sure it moves forward. Heavily in 2020, and especially COVID time, technology was a focus of this goal to make sure we had technology across the board for our students when they are at home and doing online learning. As we move forward, we'll want to make sure we balance that out across our goals, and of course continue to make sure all students and staff have what they need to teach to our standards. All right, there's more. We got a lot. I shoved them all there. Here we go. So goal 4 is our recruit and retain. And a lot of times how we had this one was, are you credentialed? You know, we want all our teachers to be credentialed. You know, that's what HR does, and that's what we want to make sure we have. We want to make sure, and looking at that metric, actually, it's about the same as last year, you know, because we have a lot of our teachers who do athletics. So when that data gets published on Friday, it'll be very similar to last year because, again, how we report our appropriateness of assignments for teachers. But we have our staff. We're doing such a great job making sure we're hiring qualified teachers. Now we want to make sure we emphasize also what are we doing in the classroom with our teachers and our staff across the board. And so as we plan, those are things we're thinking about, what are we doing now and where do we want to move with our goals as we move forward. Again, as you see, the metrics kind of get tinier here, and it's great though. We've been doing a lot of professional development across the board. You know, our counselors have been working with hatching. We have our special populations that they're working with to help with our special ed departments. We also, of course, safety's involved, and every day our must-haves, and of course, our superintendent goals. So again, as we move forward, we want to tie in a lot to make sure we balance our goals across, and of course, the funding part as that goes. So, moving forward. Each site in the fall holds 2 LCAP meetings, and they have a chance to get feedback from their educational partners, but share what our LCAP goals look like at their sites. A lot of our sites do a kind of award ceremony, that second one, and Mr. Jolly kind of brought that up, how they recognize students who might have been reclassified, students who might have had great grades during that time. AP pass rates, some of the sites look at, and of course, sometimes SBAC scores. And so that's kind of what our sites focus on in the fall, and then again, provide us feedback as we move forward. And especially as we plan for 24-27, we want to make sure we get as much input as we can. And so these are our meetings that we have for the spring. A little bit of the planning as we have began looking at the goals and education in our Ed Services group. And then we have taken it to our DLT and cabinet, and we're hoping to bring it to you guys here shortly as we keep kind of just working what we think would be our wording to match our future to make sure we are supporting all students and our subgroups. And again, some of these are required through the state of California, who we have to meet with. We are trying to now kind of balance it out, like visit the north side for our parent community engagement, and then our south sites. And same thing with our students. We want to make sure we have a chance to sit down with them to hear their voice. All right, wrapping it up. We have had a lot of opportunities and a lot of successes with the opportunities that we're providing our sites. It is exciting. I could stand up here and probably talk all day and all night about everything we're doing across the board. And we have some highlights again with just our work with our counselors, the hatching results, and our consistent services that we're bringing across the board at our sites. Again, adding that extra counselor and breaking down what we could do to match our counselors' standards, their standards. And then again, our nutritional services with the new facilities and providing our students with the diverse, fresh, and plentiful menu of choices. Our educational technology department had a great completed whole district network refresh this year. And again, just tying in those MTSS Tier 2 and 3 intervention supports and expanding those opportunities as we keep figuring out what we need for our students. And so that is something that we continue to grow and do. So that is a lot, but we keep working every day as a team to really give back to our families, our students, and get them ready for their future. Questions, because that was a lot.
What do you see as the biggest challenge as we start to plan for the next round, the next 3-year period?
It's hard because I see excitement. Because I kind of see like, where do we get to move and where do we get to plan? And we know, I think right now, where we need to move. So that's exciting that we have ideas and we can move forward. Challenge is always that sometimes it's hard not to hear from the families or the students and the parents that we need to hear from the most. We were actually working with Capital Impact, trying to help us figure out what's the best way to get to those families and hear what they need to share with us. And so again, that's hopefully tying us to the MUHSD 2030.
So what services do they provide? That was going to be one of my follow-up question was, how do we get more families engaged in this process, right?
Yeah. So we're still working with Capital Impact. It's a 14-month thing. We're only in phase 1, and they're going to actually be presenting to you guys in February, kind of where we're building. I agree. You know, at Merced High back when we were there, it was incentivizing, right? And a lot of our federal funds and our grants were not allowed to give incentives. But, you know, at Merced, we had an easy one, free off-campus lunch. And so be able to pull in parents. So sometimes we need to figure out when's the best time for them. And you're going to have to make multiple opportunities for that. A goal is, you know, a lot of our parents in the Merced area are on that south side. We pull 3 different high schools from that south side, and that's our lowest socioeconomic area. So travel, work for them, and the needs, that's where we sometimes need to get to. We need to get to where our families are, and that's really find out the best time. And we're all busy. All of us are busy. And so it's just really just having that opportunity to hear what they have to say, that what they need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time we'll move on to the College Scholarship and Financial Aid Department presentation.
Okay, good evening, President Hammond, board members. My name is Amy Pellissier, and I'm a program administrator for MUHSD, and I work closely with our College Scholarship and Financial Aid Department. Tonight, we have 3 members of that department here to give you some data, some year-end numbers from last year, and some current numbers from our college application season that just ended, sort of. They're here to give you that data and tell you a little bit about what they do. So we have, from our north schools, we have Miss Gina Lance, and right here, and Miss Gleason in the back. And from our south schools, we have Miss Reese here, and then there's Bernadine Dialey, but she could not make it tonight. Our students are extremely fortunate to have access to 2 advisors and technicians whose sole purpose is to assist students with navigating the sometimes very complex task of applying to college or post-secondary education, and also helping them secure finances to make their dreams a reality. Let me figure out how to advance my slides here. Down, okay, that makes sense. Up seems good, but that's all right. Some of their duties are listed up here, but their expertise really lies in the areas down below: CSU and UC applications, FAFSA, CATA, for parents and students, transcript evaluation. They do a lot of work there with issues with transcripts, with transfer students, things that come up with NC2A, A to G evaluation, and they manage our local and district scholarships, which is a huge undertaking in itself. That's really their expertise. Between Brandy and Gina, they have 14 years of combined experience focusing solely on advising in these areas. So they just have a wealth of knowledge. I know that when my kids were going through at Merced High, I relied on them a lot to answer some questions. And actually, when your kids are in high school, a lot of times they don't want mom or dad to help them with that, so I just kept sending my kids to them. You go see Miss Lance, or you go see Miss Reese. So they help them tremendously in navigating that system, and I'm so happy to work with them. So I'm going to have Miss Reese, Brandy, come up and talk a little bit about our college support since that application season just came to an end.
We have lots of notes tonight, sorry. Hi, my name is Brandy Reese, and tonight we hope to give you an overview of our domain, which is college scholarships and financial aid. It's a lot. We have a lot that we do, and trying to quantify what that is sometimes a large task for us. So our college, how we support students, we hope you see that in the information we provide tonight and some of that data that supports that. So in the fall, we kind of hit the ground running into our senior classes, and we do a big introduction of who we are and how we help support them through the whole entire school year. We try to introduce real important dates to them, give them timelines that they can kind of visually see so that they can plan their senior year. We don't want things to come unexpectedly to them. We want them to be able to feel confident and have choices ready as and we share that information with our seniors in all the classrooms. So we try to we go into all of those senior econ classes and very, very early on share resources with them. Our newsletter, if you guys are familiar with our newsletter, and really let them know how we can help support them again through the year. We have application workshops to help support them with their college applications in the months of October and November. And again, just making sure they know how to sign up for that, where to look for that information at. We've moved to QR codes that we kind of have posted all over campuses so that students can be like, oh yeah, I need to do that, and take a camera in their phones and scan that QR code and sign up for our workshops. We saw an increase from last year of over 200 more students come to our workshops. So we had 890 students actually sign in to one of our workshops this year, which again, that's 200 more than last year. And then we do provide daily assistance. Students can make appointments with us if they have questions, and support them again through that college process. And again, just making sure that they're aware of what to expect really as they kind of move through that process. This slide is our UC and CSU application data. For the very first time through California colleges, we're able to see real-time data of students who have submitted. So one thing we do know is looking at this numbers, you're like, that seems low, And that's because this data comes specifically from CCGI. And a student has to launch their application through CCGI in order for it to record. So this is just recordable data that we have. And again, this is the first year that we've been able to have that type of data. And it also is still going to move up. As we've seen, a lot of the CSUs have extended their deadline this year. So we'll see those numbers come up a little bit before they all close. The CSUs are still open, and UC Merced. So CCGI, that's that California College logo, is a partnership with the state of California, and we data share with them. And again, this is our very, very first year of being able to use that data. And we really appreciate the fact that now we can look to see and who's on track A through G. We can see things like students who've started an application but haven't submitted an application. And then we can really spend some tier 2 interventions on pockets of students who we know and can identify will need some extra help or support. So we spent some time this year, and again, this is the first year that we're able to see, oh, hey, you started an application, but you haven't finished it. I'm going to come to my workshop next week, and we can help you get this submitted. So that was really, really, really exciting for us. And we know through CCGI as well that we'll just continue to grow. They have lessons for students and parents from 9th to 12th grade that has career inventories. It has an A through G tracker. So a lot of really cool data and information that we're sharing now with CCGI that we can use as we use targeted interventions. So we think that that's going to be very, very helpful, but we're really, really excited to be able to do that.
All right, so now I'm going to provide some information on the scholarship support side of things. Our department is in a unique situation where we kind of work on both sides of scholarship. So we communicate with the generous community donors, families, and just kind of provide updated information and then get the updated information from them about scholarship applications, if they need to make changes, those kinds of things. So I kind of call that the behind the scenes part with those generous community donors. And then, of course, on the other side, the application side with our seniors, advertising, promoting, assisting with applications, just kind of that full process of things. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but one of the things I wanted to highlight is the Going Merry. Going Merry is a scholarship platform that we have been using since 21, partially as a result of COVID. During that shutdown period, we had paper applications out and all kinds of different ways for students to, turn them into us and those things. So we recognized that it was time to move to a more digital platform to make things a little bit easier for seniors. So it's a user-friendly platform for our seniors. The really helpful part with Going Merry is they can create one profile, kind of like a common application, I guess you would say, where they put all of their information in there one time, and then that information is shared with multiple scholarships. So previously, a student maybe had to do 20 different local scholarships, but now with the approximately 160 local scholarships through Going Merry, they do it one time, and then they just provide maybe the unique supplemental essay questions or those kinds of things. So really user-friendly for our seniors, and we really push that out to seniors starting in the beginning when Brandy mentioned those fall visits. We talk about Going Merry. And then when we launch again in January, we will, of course, be hitting that hard again with the seniors with the local launch in January. The nice part about Going Merry, too, just quick note, is a parent part, too. So some of those seniors that are so busy with their academics, their sports activities, the parent can log in, create their own account, and kind of help that process with students as well. And now onto just a little bit of data on scholarships. So the first slide, just kind of a summary of our total scholarships for MUHSD starting in 2016 up through last year, class of 2023. You can see that COVID dip, right, with COVID shutdown, and with the class of 2020, and then into 21 as well. But back to our recent 2023, some pretty strong numbers with the 2,125 awards, in the amount of $7.4 million. So just some summary data there. So now breaking it down by schools. This is usually one of those interesting areas of data. So this is class of 23 total scholarship earnings by school. And oftentimes a lot of different questions come up from looking at this. I guess the first thing I would point out is, yes, that new school, El Capitan High School, kind of inched out and on top there, beat BUHAC by a bit, and broke that $2 million mark, which is pretty impressive. So oftentimes questions come up with the differences between school to school or year to year, and there are a lot of variables with that. So quick example, even with Atwater High School, right, the previous year, just 1 year before, they were at $1.5 million. So you really see differences. A big part of that can come down to the university scholarships, so some of those private university scholarships, of course, athletic scholarships, military academy appointments, and then the other would be like the Virginia Trust Fund, for example, scholarships that are specific to an attending high school that other schools don't have that option. And final data slide for scholarships is BLAS disbursement. We just felt like BLAS kind of deserves a slide of its own. It's been around since 1973, has awarded over $21 million for our district students, so we're really fortunate to have BLAS. BLAS is nice too because our students, our alumni students, can reapply for BLAS up to 4 years. So we kind of help with processing those applications for seniors for the committees, but also for those alumni students too, because they can reapply for 4 years. So that's just some quick data on that. So last year, 514 seniors for the total award amount, and then 337 alumni students. And that finishes up scholarships. I'm going to have Brandy finish up with financial aid.
So I'm going to finish up with financial aid. To say we're bracing for it is kind of probably going to be an understatement this year for us. It's going to be extremely challenging because the federal government has decided to revamp the FAFSA. So this is not just us, it's probably every counselor in the state of California, in the United States, sorry. So they've revamped and they haven't released it. Traditionally speaking, it's released in October, and they keep telling us December 31st it's going to open. So that makes it really hard for us because we start in October and we have then some time to work on financial aid. Financial aid, if many of you have had seniors, it's hard to say least. So financial aid, we know it's going to be a challenging year for us because it's going to really bleed into our scholarship season and how we support students through financial aid and scholarships this year in the spring. So we're anticipating a January launch from the Gov. And so what we're doing our best right now to prepare for FAFSA with helping students create FSA IDs. So we've been out in those senior classes now again for the second time, re-talking about, hey, those college apps are still open, and if you, and starting those FSA IDs and supporting them in those classrooms, providing them with information to take home so that parents are aware. We've started sending out parent squares because we know that, people know that it opens in October and it's not open yet. And I don't know, maybe some people do or some people do not know. So we do have our class of 23 submission data ready for you guys that you guys can see. As you can see, our comprehensive site submission percentage is at 77%, and that is from the California State Dashboard. So we are above the California Public Schools percentage. So we're pretty proud of that. With it just being the 4 of us and with support of CalSoap, again, it's a big task for us. Also along with that, last year an Assembly Bill 469 came through that mandates high schools to track that students have completed their FAFSA, or financial aid forms. So that's a big task for us as well. And so we do our best, and we're able to then pull that data and look at, students who haven't completed versus students who have completed, and follow up with students for that as well. So again, we know it's going to be a big task for us again this year, and we're preparing for it as well as we can. We just wanted to kind of publicly put out there, we have our parent workshops that we already have scheduled at each of the sites. We're hoping those early January ones. We're not going to experience lots of technical issues with the website, but we know we will, for parents, and we do offer them in English and in Spanish. We collaborate with our local partners, so Merced College, Stanislaus, UC Merced, CalSoap. It's really this big group effort because we have families come and need help and kind of navigating this process and application. So we have that available for our families as well. Thank you.
We would love to entertain any questions or comments that you might have.
I have a question. First of all, you provide some wonderful services. Thank you to you and your team for what you do. Are any of these services tiered or provided by grade level as sort of in a progressive approach, so that students have a pretty strong idea of what's available prior to their senior year?
Yeah, so our school counselors provide a lot of that information, just the pre-career surveys and career research, college research. They do the basics for the lower grade levels, and this department primarily works with the seniors at a tier 2, tier 3 level. They do provide the workshops for tier 1 for all seniors, but they really focus on individualized help and workshops. They talked a little bit about CCGI and California colleges. It is a wonderful platform. It was initiated by Gavin Newsom. It is statewide. It is not all schools have adopted it yet, but we are very fortunate to have adopted it as MUHSD. We believe that they have some wonderful lessons for the 9th through 12th grade that I think we can start implementing through some of our classes so that our students are doing the career research and the college researches and the financial aid research much more so than we have been able to do in the past, so that by the time they get to that senior year, they can target more students and get those numbers up for our CSU, UC applications, our A to G. It's a great platform. That platform will track everything in one place: community college, CSU, UC application statuses, and financial aid status all in one place. It talks with our system. We are updating our information with them monthly. So we just think it's going to grow and just become a really great tool where we can provide those services at the lower levels as well. So it's not such a big, overwhelming thing their senior year.
Thank you.
On the Mary system, does that list all the scholarships that are available so they can click on it?
Yeah, good question. So we use it primarily, it started with like our local scholarship opportunity programs, but the nice thing about Going Mary, it also has other external scholarships that are on there also. So right now, if a senior goes, and that's why we encourage them to start that profile early on in the fall, because there are some scholarships available. But the local scholarship launch usually happens in January, because that way we have first semester grades for senior year on there. Some of our committees like to see that.
So it does include local and national.
Yeah, and they have filters on there where they can just look at local if they, because sometimes when they first start, there can be hundreds of scholarships to filter through. Pretty user-friendly format with some tiles visually laid out, but they can filter by local to just to kind of streamline that a little bit more, and then open it back up, or look by dates, deadline dates we'll go through as well.
Is there any chance of getting Virginia and Cyril Smith on that program? I know that's beyond your control, but I'm just curious if there's conversations happening about that.
We've talked to them. They've actually just revamped. I know you've had some experience with their application, and it's difficult. They've gone totally digital, MCOE. So I don't think so. I think they have their own platform that they're using. But we do advertise and push out that information. I just sent information out to students and parents about that application coming open, but I don't foresee them going to Going Mary. Sometimes we'll see outside organizations like that link their application in there, and then it redirects them to a website like that. And I can talk to them about maybe doing that this year too.
I mean, it would help students, right? And I
Right.
think application rates would go up.
I think you mentioned this, but you said they did it, for example, UC Merced extended their application deadline, correct? To January, I think, 27th or something like that? Well, the date doesn't matter, but they did extend it, right, along with others?
UC Merced did, and about 15 CSUs did. And we did push that out again this afternoon via email to students too.
Is there any way to break down students that are applying for UC that are like direct admission to UC Merced? I know you have like your numbers here. I was just curious if
So
we know.
are you talking about the students who are accepted through the MAP
Yes.
program?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
do get that
Okay.
data, and we would be able to share that data with you. Yes, we could.
First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for everything you all do for our seniors and for our students. As a mother of a senior, this has been a very interesting season for me. I felt like I was back in school, navigating the process with my child. So just to make sure that I understood correctly, when I looked at the UC and CSU application data, just knowing some of the background of the schools, I thought these numbers were rather low. So this does not capture the students who applied through the UC application directly.
Correct. So the only data that's collected there is through CCGI. So essentially what a student would do is log on to CCGI, and then they launch their application, and it does launch directly to the UC application. But that's how they were able to collect that specific data. So yeah, we know these numbers. Yes,
Yeah.
quite a bit, because
Okay, that made sense because when I saw Merced High was less than 100, and then I think again if we saw the class size for the class of 24, that would have put this in context, and that's the reason I asked Mr. Jolly what the senior class number was, because when I saw Livingston's numbers and now knowing that class size is 280, that means that almost 50% of their class actually applied, whereas numbers more like 30%, well, based on this data. But now that I know it's through CCG. The other question I had was, based on some of the questions you get from, what are some of the questions you get from seniors, during the workshops? And based on some of the questions, would it be helpful to have those types of workshops in the spring of their junior year so that they have the summer to maybe catch up on volunteer hours or do some of the other things that would make for a more competitive application?
Our workshops are very hands-on the application, so students are actually working on their application. So they wouldn't actually be able to do that task in their junior year. We do have students who start like their personal insight questions for the UCs in their junior year. Sometimes we do offer PIQ workshops, or UC Merced will come in and offer PIQ workshops for students. Our AVID program supports students through those PIQs as well.
Is that in the junior year though, the PIQ work?
Both, we do both. Primarily in the fall of their senior year, but there is some that happen in the spring of their junior year as well.
I asked that because, again, a lot of feedback from this senior class and parents who are going through the journey with their students about, once school starts, a lot of them are in activities in sports and they're traveling for sports through school. And some of them are seeing the PIQs for the very first time in their fall semester. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to even show last year's PIQs in the spring so that they could work on them or at least formulate, essays over the summer and get a head start. Because I think everyone waits till the application's open and then scramble at the end.
So we do have information in our newsletter that goes out for 9th and 11th grade that includes links and resources for the personal insight questions for our underclassmen. That and like summer programs, college summer programs, that information's in our 9th through 11th newsletter as well, that we try to highlight that information for families.
And also through Hatching's results, we are presenting in 3 different domains at each grade level. So it might be something that we start looking at presenting to our junior class just through the Hatching's results and our franchise lessons that we are creating. So then we can hit them just with our school counselors as they are working with their junior class or their sophomore class or their freshman class. So it's a good idea. It's a great idea to add that in there. Yeah, we always think we can get them prepared very early, but it's hard when we talk about it and they just don't see college being right there yet until they hit that senior year. It's like, oh, I tried to warn you, but it's hard to get them going that junior year to start them in that process of really thinking and planning the college app process. So
Thank you very much.
thank you guys.
One of the sessions that I went to at the school board conference a few years ago, I was really impressed with what they did with freshman students to get them ready. They talked them through, what the different requirements would be if you want to go to a community college, a state school, or a UC, and then even that, the difference between UCLA and UC Merced. And then the students created a list of their top 5 or 10 and had to understand their grades, their SATs, their community service, their different involvement, and then the cost of tuition and aid that was potentially available. And then they had to share it with their parents and get their parents' signature, so the parents were bought in as well. And I thought it was very impressive because I think, like you just said, a lot of kids get to senior year and are like, what am I going to do? And it's the first time, yes, it's not the first time they've heard it, but it's the first time they've really considered it. And as we know, so many of our students would be first generation to go to school, so this is really a new concept. So I love that idea, and I know we're going to talk a little bit later here maybe on how to revamp freshman seminar, but I would, love to see something like that. One of my other questions is, we have so many seniors that are in dual enrollment. They're at community college classes, so they're not taking econ on their campus. How do you reach those students, those seniors?
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Yes. We try a combination of things. For starters, we do send out those presentations, the information through email, but we know that's not always the best way to get that information. But when we send it out through email, we always invite them to, here's our appointment form, so if you do have questions on that, if you want to go over this information, please come in. In situations where we have the time, we also will run those and then send summons passes for them and kind of call them in groups of 4. Sometimes I'll just do a different class period. I've done that too, third period in the library, call them in. So I would say a combination of things.
Okay. One last question. The data is great, and as you said, there's lots of noise in it by year and by school. Can we see it broken down by local scholarships, university and college scholarships, military, that sort of thing? I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, we could do that for class of 23 or a few different years or
however you think it would be most helpful. Right,
how much do you want to sort through?
Right,
That's
I
a
know,
lot of
I know.
data.
And then to see how many students were in that graduating class, as Amali has pointed out. And it would also be interesting to see the number of unduplicated students who've applied, because obviously students apply for multiples. So that would be good information to have.
Sure, we'll get that too.
Thank you. Okay.
I have one last question. The Common App. How many students come to you with questions on filling out the Common App?
We have students that come in NCS. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the number, but we get.
So there is interest in.
Yeah, maybe. I'd say that's a good starting point. I would say 5 to 10 at most of the north sites. And sometimes they'll attend our workshops. Sometimes that question will come up too. Can I work on my Arizona State app or Common App? And absolutely, it's just time for them to work on it. And if questions come up during that time period.
Thank you, ladies, very much. Mrs. Ballinger, Superintendent's goal update, goals.
While Mrs. Ballinger is getting situated there, I just want to remind the board that this is step 1 for the goals this year. We'll kind of review where we think we are, and you can tell us your thoughts on that. And we'd like to leave tonight with our arms around basically a final list for next year.
Good evening again. Oh, it's like crackly. Like Mr. Peterson said, this is kind of an overview. You've heard the last several meetings we've talked about goals and kind of our progress on the superintendent goals. And tonight I have the kind of that final progress for you, and then also some suggested goals. I like this one better. Okay. I always go the wrong way. There we go. So we had a math goal for the last year, actually the last 2 years. And this one we have met all 3 areas there. The bottom one of the individual student growth being measured is a yellow. I put that as a yellow. We are well on our way to do that, but this will be the first year that we have all the quarter assessments, the pre-assessment and the post-assessment, that we'll be able to gather that data on to be able to set those eventual goals at a later time. We are able to look at individual student growth, though, each quarter with those. So I just kind of left that one a yellow because that's kind of a continued work in progress there.
Is there a goal? I mean, obviously, it's not stated, but we're hoping to improve, right? I mean, this is just I don't know, a test. We're testing kids, but what is the goal?
Yeah, there was not a number goal set when we made this goal 2 years ago. It was, you need to remember that when we started with this, we had no kind of assessment to measure. We didn't. There was no pre, no post, no local assessments in any form. So this goal was really to get those implemented. At that time, we kind of talked about just growth, but we didn't set a growth goal at that time. So our counseling goal is another one that we're finishing up the second year on, and this one has been completed. I do want to recognize that there's been a lot of great work done by our counselors, Christy Johnson and Caitlin Mayo. They've really worked hard to get all of these things implemented, and it really has been a change to our counseling model. We now have a comprehensive counseling model that our counselors are providing for all domains for students. The handbook has been developed. They've received many training opportunities with Hatching's results and Dr. Trish Hatch. And then they've also worked on creating that tiered model of counseling services that matches the MTSS model of the tier 1 that everybody gets, and then the tier 2 and 3 as students need it. We've also been able to increase direct services with this goal. So this has been a really robust goal for us, that a lot of good work has been done there. The MTSS goal has also been completed. I think you heard from Mr. Jolly tonight all the ways that he's recognizing students. And this goal, when it was set, was to recognize 50% of the student body. And as Mr. Jolly said, he's already recognized over 1,000 students, which is close to the size of his student body, and we're only in December, so that's fantastic. What I want to point out, though, is that MTSS is really like the umbrella. Everything we do falls under MTSS. That recognition does, but so does our work in math, so does our work in counseling, so does our work in athletics, involvement, attendance. All of those things really fall under MTSS when we think about tiering our services so that everybody is getting that tier 1 level, and then we're providing the services to the students who need it at the tier 2 and the tier 3 level. So as you look and we talk about the proposed goals, we don't have a specific MTSS one because all of them fall under MTSS. And I think that's kind of a mindset we really want to start promoting, that all the work we're doing are these tiered services. The special education goal, this was our first year in that goal. So I put it kind of as a yellow exclamation point because we'd like to continue with that goal because there's still some work that we want to do here. We did complete the co-teacher training already, and remember, this is the first year in it, so we've only been in this goal for a few months of this school year. And so a lot of good work has been done there with the co-teacher training and the increase in professional development for our special ed teachers. That first one that's in the red, we've not started that yet. They're going to start developing that learning skills curriculum in the spring. They've gathered some stuff, but we really haven't done the work with the teachers yet. The SDC lesson planning has started with our teachers, and then the developing the common understanding of the language surrounding case management. We just have a couple more sites that need to go through that PD so that we develop that common understanding across the district. So the special education goal is one we'd like to continue. As well as the English goal. We just adopted new English curriculum for this school year. We want to go through that same process with English that we did with math, where they develop the pre-assessment, the post-assessment, and then the local assessments for each quarter, so we can start reviewing that data and finding our gaps and where we need to improve. We also had the Read 180 pilot. We expanded that this year. We did do Read 180 last year, and we expanded it this year to include a sophomore level. So our students who maybe didn't progress as much as we'd hoped last year in the first and ninth grade, we moved them into also the second level of that. So they're still getting that Read 180 support. It is an intervention for us to help students be able to learn to read better. So we've seen some success there, but it's another one we like to continue working on. And then as part of our MTSS goal last year, we also had the instruction goal, which we ended up pulling out this year, and that was to develop that administrative walkthrough form that measured the 4 C's and skills, and I shared a lot of that data with you last month. And so that's been completed, but we do want to keep an instruction goal, and I'll get to that in just a moment, a new instruction goal. So some of the suggestions for new goals that we've gotten, you can see there are a number of them. A few things that really stood out was there's freshman seminar is mentioned, and I think that we have been talking about freshman seminar for a while, that's an area that, one, is not consistent across the district, and 2, has a lot of potential to meet some of the needs like you heard tonight with the CCGI. We talked about scholarships in colleges and also career development in that area. It's really just has not been consistent across the district, so we want to come up with a consistent curriculum. We do want to involve teachers in that, and I'll get to that more in a moment. Another one of the themes that I think is here, but also last year is rigor, increasing rigor. So last year, we did some LCAP student meetings, and students talked to us about that we don't feel challenged. I know that Mr. Peterson had meetings with seniors in the spring last year. They said the same thing. We want our school to challenge us. So I think that rigor has been another one that's kind of come up and evolved as an area that we really need to work on. So the first kind of newish goal, it's an instruction goal again, that we'd like to propose is on depth of knowledge, and that's DOK. And that's kind of the level of cognitive task that we're asking students to do in the classroom. And it's measured on a scale of 1, 2, 3, 4. We gather that data now when our administrators go into classrooms. Teachers are knowledgeable about it to plan for that, but really not seen at the levels we want to see it at. And then I think students are expressing it's not at the level they want it at. So a proposed goal would be that we would observe level 2 DOK and higher 80% of the time, and that teachers would plan for level 3 and above 20% of the time. And planning, how do I observe planning? That's difficult in a lesson, right, unless I'm looking at individual lesson plans. So as we talked about it, that could be indicated by a learning objective and learning target. So a goal like this would also help us increase the rigor in our learning objectives and learning targets so students know that we're expecting more of them. So obviously, in order to meet this goal, we would need to provide professional development on increasing DOK to all instructional staff. And then something that's really important also is that calibration on how to measure DOK, so that when we're gathering the data, we're all calling DOK2 level DOK2, because right now we're still missing some of that calibration. So I think that makes our data a little more difficult to look at and plan for because we know it's not consistent.
Can you share with us what level 2 is and level 3?
So level 1 is kind of like when you just ask a recall question. So like if I just say, today is Wednesday, I say, what is today? And you say Wednesday, that's a level 1. So it's real basic. But level 1 has its place in a lesson, right? There are certain things we just need kids to know, and that's what a level 1 is. So then the complexity grows to where level 4 is where students are like creating something of their own. So they're taking what they've learned along the way, and they're creating something and using that information on their own. And so it scaffolds up from 1 to 2 to 3, and then that's the highest level. I think there's a whole thing I could share with you, but I think that's like the basic of it. So we also would like to propose a social studies goal, and this one specifically, we'd like to target freshman seminar in health. We do have some work we need to do in health, and those are the 2 classes our freshmen take. That we'd like the freshman seminar in health teachers to collaborate to develop new curriculum for both courses that reflect the district's vision and then California state requirements, because there are some state requirements that need to be covered in those classes. But in addition, we don't want the social studies goal just to be about freshman seminar in health. We need to get on that kind of path of developing the local assessments for our other levels. So for our world history, our US history, and our econ and government, we want to go ahead and develop lessons that reflect that focus on student-centered and skills-based instruction. So we kind of like to wrap all of that into one goal for social studies. And most of the teachers teach multiple things in that department anyway, so it makes sense to kind of do it all at once. We've also seen the need to provide opportunities to pursue careers in education. And that's not just for our staff. You know, of course, we want teacher recruitment, classified recruitment. We want our own people to be able to promote, but it's also for students. Education is one of our career pathways. It's the one we should be experts on, right? So we want to be able to start providing some of those like apprenticeship opportunities, or like building capacity in our pathways related to education for our students too. So this proposed goal, I just kind of left it more broad because we really want to focus those opportunities on something in all the different areas. So teacher, classified, admin, students. So I think just growing our own, and the idea that, you know, you could be a student in Merced Union High School District and then come work for us in some capacity because you learned about that career from us, is a very lofty goal and beneficial for all of us and our communities. So that's kind of the proposed ones. I put a list here of the complete list of the 5 that we would propose for, the 5 areas we would propose for next year, because of course there's multiple goals under each one of those.
Mandy, can we go back to the different idea page? Different ideas?
Oh, yeah. The ones that we gathered?
Yeah.
This one?
And I would like the board to comment on these, and I see some of them as, example, cell phone policy. I think we all agree that that needs to be redone. I think we are in agreement with the union for the most part. That's going to happen in the spring, and we will get your feedback between now and then. I'm not sure that needs to be a district-wide goal. I think that's a concern that you need to know we're going to solve. Does that make sense? So we kind of need to talk these through.
And I think that there's a few like that on there. You can also see the district-wide student involvement initiative, which you've seen some data on that this year also. So I think there might be a few on there like that.
So you're referring to a district-wide policy
Correct.
and you anticipate we would have that by the end of the year?
Yes. I think we need to have it, yes.
I put a district-wide sportsmanship program. I listed that. I know the UC has volunteered to do some training with our teams, and the CCC is primarily MUHSD, and maybe again, it doesn't have to be a goal, but I would love to see something where our athletes are supporting each other school to school more than they do today. And I think we've had some ugliness, and I would just like to think that our district could be better than that with some training, some encouragement, and life lessons, right?
Yeah, being proactive and keeping that up front on the athletic page.
And I think we have some of that going on, but maybe bringing that more to the forefront.
Yeah, more of an emphasis. We had adopted Victory with Honor some time ago, and it became institutionalized in our district. But it needs to be a refocus in the area. But,
I think maybe in re-energized or something. I think
Yeah.
some of the coaches, the ADs, they've said the same speech over and over again. It's kind of rote to them, but for the athletes, it's brand new their freshman year, right? It can make an impression, and then
Absolutely. We're working on updating the athletic handbook and the coach's handbook to have a re-emphasis in that.
and UC Merced has offered to be a partner in that and do some training, and I think that might be a tremendous resource.
Certainly something we can look into.
So let's do this. Check mark on sportsmanship. We will bring that back to you in the spring. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Excellent.
Phones, check, same thing. What else do I see up there? District-wide student involvement initiative. Personally, I think that's happening. It's happening better this year than ever before. I think Amy's done a great job with really. We didn't have all the granular data at the beginning of the year like she has developed now, a few months into the year. So all of that data is going to be super helpful for administrative teams to dig into in the spring and really, figure out how to find that 20% and how do we go from 80 to 92, right? So.
Well, I think part of that too is continuity from site to site, and we all heard Mrs. Cope speak at El Cap, and we're super jazzed about what she's doing to get her students recognized and involved, and we heard more tonight from Mr. Jolly, but I don't think every site's doing that. So I think that's let's do this, MUHSD, right?
Okay, so.
Would that just be maybe an update in the spring
Yeah,
with what each site is doing?
Same thing. Let's bring that back in the spring so you can, and we can also add that to the principal's report every month. So, you know, like we talked about MTSS since August, we can shift gears on that, or we can simply just add that to a topic within MTSS, because MTSS is everything, right? I would say vaping is the same. I don't have the answer to that. I don't think anybody in this room has the answer to that, but we can certainly search out what other districts are doing, or sites within our district that are doing a better job than others, and report back on that also.
Mr. Peterson or Mr. Calderon, some of these would probably fit under an administrative regulation, right? More or less. So we do have some policies that we could tie those into, like the vaping, like the anti-vaping, where you have the smoking.
Oh,
right?
absolutely,
So we can
yeah.
tie those all in and do an administrative reg. More or less, I'm just a thought.
I believe it already exists.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can make any updates as necessary.
Can we go back to the slide with the recommended goals?
Or proposed goals. They're individual, I think.
Can we start giving some input then on, with that point? I like the idea of continuing the special education, the counseling. I mean, some of those are ongoing. I don't know if they need to be listed, because I know they're going to be a maintenance, probably, type goal. As you mentioned, MTSS is not necessarily a goal. It encompasses everything. I like the idea, as we receive these reports, that it continues through the lens of the MTSS and that structure, because that's very helpful and it ties everything together. I like the goals. The only one that I think we're missing is some type of a metric on math. You know, we talked about some type of a quantitative metric by which to measure how we're doing in that area.
And I'd agree that we need to move there. We've done a lot with math, and they need to see what those local assessments are going to look like. I think, and then we would be prepared to make a goal around that. But we don't have a baseline data right now to be able to do that. That's kind of my concern with that one.
Okay, that makes sense. And then with the seminar through the social studies, there was, thank you. So this would include, you had mentioned the apprenticeship, internship, type.
That would be with the Grow Your Own
Or with
goal.
the Grow Your
Yeah.
Own. Would the seminar include, building in the math literacy, the social capital? We learned a little bit about that at the conference, and how that ties into, college and career, apprenticeships, internships, and so forth. And is the idea to build some of that in where we can? I know there's requirements that have to be met, but if we...
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of, right now there's like a catch-all, that's kind of the catch-all spot, so we need to prioritize those and decide it, and I really would value teacher input on that also, for what they're seeing too. But the financial literacy piece, the media literacy piece that's coming out, all of those, that would probably be the place that we would want to put that. But we want to leave room for college and career exploration also.
Yeah, it's a lot to fit into.
Tonight, we have the generic titles. We will bring that back to you as an action item in January with the title and then the sub areas, which is what you're talking about for social studies.
For efficiency's sake, can we go goal by goal, and then each trustee, if you have comments, we can talk about math all at the same time, and then social studies like that? So anyway, does anyone else have anything they want to add on math? I have a question on math. I think math and English are the two subjects that probably frustrate students the most, right? And if they're not doing well in those classes, they give up, they want to drop out. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out from a student perspective how we add a metric as well. Like student, I don't know, it's not necessarily satisfaction, but for instance, my son last year said, I don't belong in this class, but it was too late in the school year. And so he finished math 2, and now he's struggling in math 3. You know, I mean, how do we, it's kind of like the kids in 3rd grade that get passed on to 4th grade, they get passed on to 5th grade, and now they come into our high school district and they're so below. How do we help students who get behind so that they're not continuing into a class that they're just going to be terribly frustrated in? Do we make mid-year adjustments? I mean, I hear this as a frustration all the time. I just use my kid as because it's very personal.
And we talk about counseling decisions. Like sometimes there are counseling decisions that have to be made mid-year. But I will say, I mean, I was an English teacher. English and math are required classes.
Absolutely.
Students don't have a lot of agency and choice of what they're going to take. Like we have Math 1, Math 2, Math 3. We have English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4. Yeah, at the higher level math, you get a little bit of agency in choosing pre-cal or stats, but they're required classes. I think that kind of goes back to an instruction goal of engaging students in the instruction that we're providing them and challenging them so that they build that agency where I can do math, I can do English, because I think that instruction piece is the piece where we need to engage them. So I think that a lot of, you heard Mr. Jolly talk about panorama data. We talked about Healthy Kids Survey tonight. I think those are some of the areas we can look to measure, like satisfaction in the courses you're taking. I'm not sure, again, that's a math goal. I mean, I can work on that, but I think those are other pieces of our MTSS plan to measure satisfaction and how confident you are in what you're doing, those pieces.
Maybe we can see a metric on the number of students that repeat a math class or something along those lines. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because if we move them on to the next level of math and they don't have the basics, we have failed that student. And I mean that starting in elementary school. It's not fair to them to come into the high school district, and I'm so glad we have Read 180, but that's probably too advanced for some kids.
It's actually a really great intervention.
Yeah, it's a fantastic intervention, right? No, I agree. I want to make sure that we're setting kids up to succeed. They have to have math. They have to. They can't even get through chemistry if they can't do basic math, right? I mean, and then they can't get a job, or they do get a job and they can't succeed because they can't add. So I'm trying to, not picking on math, and I'm not picking on our district. I'm concerned for student success and making sure they have the skills they need to succeed post-high school.
I'll just add one little piece here. I think one of the things that we've started to be using and exploring is a program, Work Keys, which changes the discussion from I had to take math and that's why I'm sitting here, to it can tie math to what you want to do in life. And when you start to see, this is the math I need to do this particular job, and this is the math that I need to do this. Hey, I wanted to do this, but I'm down here. Now it starts to give you a little bit more inspiration on why you're in math, rather than just saying you have a math requirement and that's why you're sitting in this class, so do it. So we're using that, and it's starting to roll out, and I think that's going to help us with a lot of our lower level math, to try to tie them into that this is why you're doing it, and maybe give them a little bit more of that motivation.
Excellent, thank you.
That helps with that group of students, but it doesn't help with what you're talking about when your child says, why am I taking this class? If they're college bound and they're going to a CSU and UC, that's, Work Keys isn't going to be helpful.
Right, but I think Work Keys is going to be helpful to the majority.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think it has a lot of potential for our community too.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think it ties into perhaps the social studies goal. So, we can move along. Anyway, okay.
It does.
Anyone else on math? Should we move to counseling? Does everyone feel counseling is complete, continual but doesn't need to be a goal.
And I do want to point that out. Just because we're saying
Yeah.
we finished this goal doesn't mean we're never going to think about it or work on it again. We just have provided staff with skills to be able to continue it and grow without it being a goal.
I don't know that we did this, but if there was any survey data of parents and students pre this change, it would be really nice to compare pre and post. And even if we did some surveys now and then in a year or two when counselors have had more experience with all of their training and the new organization of counseling, I think students and parents are the customers of this department, if you will, and so hearing positive feedback would be helpful.
What has been the feedback from counselors, especially with the change that we had this year, where they don't have, let's say, 400 seniors and maybe 100 seniors? Well, what has the feedback been from them?
Christy's been working closely with them. I don't want to misspeak.
I just want to start off by saying we already had one school that was doing that, and that's Livingston High. They do not have grade level counselors here because there's only 3 of them. So they're kind of the model that we're following. It's been a struggle making this change, but I've also talked to counselors that say they really like it. So, I mean, it's just going to take some getting used to, and we're just going to keep pushing and make it even better next year.
Thank you.
Anything else on counseling? MTSS? Do we all agree that's an overarching, okay? And then special ed. Are we leaving this as is and then?
The proposal is to leave it as is because that work is just starting.
Okay.
Unless there's changes you see.
One of the sessions I went to at the school board conference that was absolutely exceptional was around students, gen ed students being buddies to special ed students. And they did that for their elective, and it was part of the teaching and learning CTE pathway program.
We do have PALs. I know that my kids were PALs when they were in high school, and that's a program we have. It's not currently part of like our education pathway. I think that's a great idea. A PAL is a general ed student who helps out in a special ed classroom, and usually they're assigned a specific student or group of students to work with on a regular basis.
English?
We've done a lot of work here, but there's a lot more work to do.
And then the instruction goal, we're suggesting that's accomplished.
And we move on to the DOK version of it.
Okay, so then the DOK, and then social studies, and then grow your own. So does anybody have comments on any of those 3 that are proposed? Obviously, you're going to include the social studies teachers in that curriculum, as you mentioned. What about the other goals? Are there other staff that you'll include in helping to develop those?
Yes. Yeah, the instruction goal of the DOK, our instructional coaches and our induction mentors will be a big part of planning that professional development. So they'll be the ones planning it. And then, of course, social studies will be specifically the social studies department. And then the Grow Your Own will be probably a combination of human resources, that department with us, and then our CTE teachers. No other questions on those, because I did want to wrap up with what we're moving towards. Our vision, we're creating a vision scoreboard that here when the new data comes out, you'll start seeing on our site websites. And really this is a concept to measure our vision, which the students will walk across that graduation stage with some college credit on their transcript and some kind of CTE certification. So we want to inspect what we expect. So we want to create the vision scoreboard and put it on the district website and then each individual one on their websites. This data that's on the draft one here, is the grad rate is for 2022, and then the college credit and the certifications are for last year, 22-23. So we'll get the updated data for the new one, but I kind of wanted to show you that draft idea tonight.
Can you include maybe the total number of students in each class too? Or at each site? Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Ballinger.
Thank you.
All right, it's Employee Association comment time. CSEA?
Okay.
Good evening, President Ham, board members, Mr. Peterson, and other cabinet members. I just want to say, listening to those young ladies speak earlier, how amazing is that? I've been doing this almost a year now, and my stomach still flips when you guys call me. I still get goosebumps, but here I am doing the best. When the young lady said, you know, arm movements, and I'm like, oh, I do that often. So what a wonderful group. And some of you heard I actually stepped outside to speak to them, because one of the big things that CSEA is doing this year, we know that there's going to be a lot of movement within the district, and a lot of us have sat on the interview panels, and sometimes we are like, oh, you could have done that better, you could have handled that better. A lot of people get anxious. So we're actually setting up interview skills workshops, and we're going to sit down and actively go over it with them and correct them and do mock interviews and try to clean things up. So I was able to step outside and actually talk to the teacher about hosting one just here in Livingston and actually using her students to assist us. How amazing were those young ladies? And we need to, you know, utilize the skills that they have. They're absolutely phenomenal, and we're definitely going to team up and take advantage of that. Couple things at the end here. Mr. Weimer, Dr. Weimer, I just want to point out that I thought that was a really excellent point that you made about tying in mathematics with the jobs that they're going to do. That is huge. When they understand the rationale behind, I need to do this. I've worked as the special education secretary at 3 different schools, and one of the things I always work with the SDC teacher, a lot of the kids, they have a life skills class, and one of the things is, like, they'll go clean the cafeteria, or they'll go and empty the trash after lunch. You can make that a math lesson. I tell them that all the time. Okay, let's talk. How many bags do we need? Do you remember how many trash cans there are? How can we measure the cleaning supplies that need to go into the water? You know, all of those things can be math lessons for them, and I really hope to use them, because a lot of our kids that are at that level and who are in life skills classes, those are going to be the careers that they go into. And how great would that be if they walked out of here with those skills, that they could go into a company, they could even come into our custodial work at our district. I just really thought that was a great point. Mr. Peterson, you're absolutely correct. The kids that are going to go to CSU and UC, a lot of them know why they have to take that math class. My son does not like math, but he knows that the goal is the 4-year math. President Ham, you had made a comment. You used your son as an example for math. I had a very similar issue with my son last year. He was in math 2. And I know you guys heard a lot about Mathia, but I want to let you know that Mathia still continues to be a problem. It is a great program if it's used correctly. Mathia is not meant, you do all 5 of these and then you get 100%. How much effort did you put in? How much time did you put into this program? If you're working on something for an hour and there's only 5 questions and you don't get it done and the teacher gives you a 0, how defeating is that? What kid's going to want to go and open it up and do it again? No matter what, I put all this effort in and I get a 0. Give them credit for the effort and then say, I noticed you were working on that for an hour. Can you show me where you're held up? Because obviously Mathia is not working. Let me reteach. Let me come back to it. But I think what happens a lot of times is we just move on. We give them their 0 because they didn't get their 5 right, and we move on. We're all sitting back here going, we can answer that. We can help you with that. We can see it. I see it every day. I have students come in, they're so upset because every grade is good except for math. As soon as I open that math up, 0 on Mathia, 0 on Mathia, 0 on Mathia. So I think that's a place where we can work. It is a great tool. It just needs to be utilized properly, and the teachers need to come back and reteach the skills that the students are missing. All right. Now coming back to what I came to talk about. One of the things, I got a call this morning, and there we go. 252 was actually, CSEA 252 was actually nominated to participate in the ACE program. We didn't know what that was, so I quickly Googled it. And it's appreciating classified employees. It's something that you have to be nominated, and CSEA votes for your group to participate in hopes that our district will share in it. It's something where we team up a trustee, a board member, a superintendent, a principal, and you go out and actively work with our members for the day, or work with our classified people for the day. And the reason that they called us and they nominated us is because they could see how hard we've been working this year, where we listen to our members, and it may not seem like a big deal to us, but for them to come forward, it's a big deal, and we respect that. And we're going to listen, and we're going to do the best that we can to work with them. The other thing that they noticed is the positive relationship that we have with the district, that, again, we don't always agree, but we respect one another, and we work with one another, and we're encouraging growth both across the board. So we're going to hear more about it, and I look forward to sharing it with you guys at Cabinet, but that's an exciting thing, and I wanted to share with you. All right. Okay. So I had wrote, let's go back to what I wrote. So I was coming to you guys this evening to share that we are continuing to have issues in the transportation department. Several months ago, I came to Atwater High and I expressed that we were pleased that we had been able to work with transportation and that things were going smoothly. Unfortunately, shortly after that school board meeting, the director informed us and her staff that basically it was her department and she would not be following some of the things that we outlined. One of the biggest things that we talked to you guys about was utilizing the field trip program that we have set up. They decided that they're not going to use the program that our district paid for. The person who is actively scheduling our field trips has created a wonderful spreadsheet that he knows how to use. We don't know how to use it. He tried to show us, and it was a very lengthy process. We do have some bus drivers here that they can see bits and pieces of it. The reason I'm bringing this to your attention is our transportation department relies heavily on the results of this spreadsheet when it determines what bus drivers get field trips. The way they do it is whoever has the most or the least hours gets the opportunity for the next field trip. So we had a bus driver who had an issue, and I am so appreciative for this bus driver because they didn't have to be honest. They didn't have to come forward, but they did because they respect their coworkers. And they came forward and they said, this is going to hurt me in the long run, but your spreadsheet, throwing out a number, your spreadsheet says that I only have 48 hours on this month of overtime. But the truth is I'm at 60, or I'm at 68 hours. But because she's so low, she gets the opportunity for the next field trips. And it takes an opportunity away from others who need to do those field trips. Now, the problem with this spreadsheet, we have expressed it. I had a meeting with HR. We pulled paperwork out. I made columns. I did everything. The problem with this spreadsheet, it was made by one person in our district. There was a problem. The bus driver brought it to the attention, and the director of transportation said, oh, I've got it taken care of. I reached out to Adam, and we have the emails to show that we reached out to Adam. You guys, Adam is a friend to the guy who created the spreadsheet who lives in Michigan. Adam is not a company that we hire or an app that we use where we can call and say, hey, there's a problem. Adam is a guy who lives in Michigan who helped create this spreadsheet. We don't know him. He has access to our computer information. He has access to our Google Drives because he helps create this spreadsheet. These people, that is what they rely on. And thank goodness this bus driver stepped up to say something. I'm concerned that we have one person who knows how to run the system that they created, and they have their friend that they met in Michigan with access to all of our stuff, helping make decisions on behalf of our bus drivers. With that being said, you guys are going to be going over our MOU that we negotiated last month. I want you to know that CSEA went into those negotiations in good faith. I know the district did as well. We went back and forth and back and forth. Our CSEA stance, our biggest thing, was allow the bus drivers to be bus drivers, allow the mechanics to be mechanics, and the office staff to be office staff. It is wonderful if on the weekend a mechanic wants to step in and do a trip, great. But the reality is we're paying overtime for a mechanic to run a trip at a mechanic's rate. That's money that could be sent elsewhere when you have a bus driver who's ready, willing, and able to work. So we, at our union meeting, at first, people were really upset because, you know, I do this position. I really would like some overtime. I want some overtime. I just bought this new house, or well, that's, with all due respect, that's not our problem. Our bus drivers need to be allowed to be bus drivers. We need to be able to save those extra funds and allow them to do their job. So what happened is after that meeting where we brought it, we voted. Unfortunately, things were said in the district office and in the transportation office, and things flipped. I believe that you have some bus drivers that want to come and speak to you guys tonight, but what I want to tell you is CSEA, our negotiations team, we absolutely went into this with the truest of intentions to make it equal across the board, to allow everybody to be able to do their job and to be able to move forward. So that's where I want to leave it. Well, not quite. Bradley, thank you so much for the things that you said earlier. He's so correct. And what I appreciate, he didn't come up, he didn't bash anybody, he didn't do anything. He was just saying, this is what we can do. You have amazing people in that department, and if they felt safe and secure, they will talk to you. They can show you where the holes are. They can help you fix these things. But they have to be willing to speak. They have to be willing, people need to be willing to hear them without the fear of being reprimanded or retaliated against. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Is anyone from DTA here? No. Okay. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. Mrs. Jayasinga, would you like to read the donations?
Yes. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I would like to thank all the generous donors for the month of December. We have a donation to be used for the Atwater High School Film Club by Matthew Vass. There's a donation for the El Capitan Leadership class from the Merced Breakfast Lions Foundation. A donation from the Merced Sunrise Rotary Club charity for Sequoia Intramural Athletics. And for Livingston High School, we have a donation from Merced College to be used for the drafting class. And then donations from the Livingston High School Alumni Association towards the Hispanic Youth Leadership Club, Boys Volleyball, and Art Club. And then there's a donation from Sunny Bassi towards the Livingston High Wrestling Club, as well as a donation from Alejandro Gonzalez for wrestling, again, Livingston High School. And for Merced High School, and these donations are to be used towards the Eddie Guerrero Memorial Scholarship, donations from Eileen M. and Stephen Guerrero, as well as Cindy Ramirez. Thank you very much to all the donors.
Thank you, Trustee Jayasinga. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have a couple questions. One is Dr. Weimer and I had an exchange about, there's an item in the consent agenda for $418,000, and that just seems like a lot of money to be in the consent agenda. And if you would remind me, I mean, you had very good response and rationale, but also suggestions, so I just wanted to bring that up.
So the reason why something would be in the consent agenda is if it was an already approved board project or item. And then when we do those, we usually have a percentage that's part of that particular one, where if it's under that percent, it comes back usually through the consent agenda and not as a regular item. This was a very large project, so this was a $10 million project. So 400,000 actually doesn't meet that threshold that we would normally use. One of the things we were talking about was whether or not we don't normally do $10 million projects, so a normal 10%, which is what we usually do, is a kind of high number. For future projects that are large like that, we could do a 10% or a maximum no more than 200,000 or something like that, where it would have to come back as a regular issue, not just part of the regular consent agenda. But when something's already approved and it's within that amount that was allowed under the original approval, that's when it usually goes through a consent.
In that, let's say 10%, like you mentioned, that's a cumulative percentage?
Preferably.
Okay. Because sometimes there's, additional costs, like with the pools, and the concrete and the evaluation of the concrete on the pool decks. And so those can tend to add up if they fall under that threshold, but there's multiple expenses.
Yeah, in this case, if you'll remember, there were a number of issues that extended the timeline way beyond what the original contract was supposed to be. They also de-scoped the project, and I think they returned about $122,000 to us. That, so every time in building, you get to the actual site, and there are unforeseen circumstances.
Anyway, I think it's worth a review. I think Dr. Weimer's suggestion is a good one. We do have some big projects, the pool, the stadiums. Somewhere down the road, there's going to be a new campus, things of that nature.
Yes, we will look at those when we bring them
Okay.
forward, and we'll tweak that part of it when we do the adoption of the contracts.
Okay. And then the other question I had stemmed from, I can't even read, Mr. Haven's comments earlier about sub-pay for bus drivers. We've done some different things to increase the attractiveness for substitute teachers. What do we pay substitute bus drivers? Does anyone know?
I do have the CSEA contract. Brad, do you know? Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So I'd like to request that we explore that a little bit.
That is a negotiable item, so we can have that conversation then.
Well, okay, I can say it later at the end of the meeting, right? But,
Yeah.
okay. Anyone else on consent agenda? Then let's call for the vote. Thank you. That passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to the action agenda. Dr. Weimer, you are poised and ready.
So it is that time for the first interim. We were hoping to have a lot better numbers and look into the future at first interim, but now we're hoping by the governor's budget in January, we're going to get a few numbers, because I will point out things that we know are going to change. When we do our budget presentations and our stuff that we have to send in for approval to the county office, we only use official published information and data that is already agreed upon. We know some of that is going to change, and so I will point that out as we go, but we can't change it in the official documents because they have not become official numbers yet. One of the things to talk about and remembering is the economic climate that we are in. We did just have and I have it on there, so I'll get to it in a second. 1% of the taxpayers in California pays 50% of the income taxes, so when one group is not making money, it is very bad for the state of California's budget. We are not like many other states that have a more stable budget because it's based on property taxes and things that don't change greatly from year to year. We have it on income tax as a large part of our tax structure in California, and so when certain groups, Silicon Valley, are doing very well, the California budget does very well. When Silicon Valley is not doing well and Los Angeles is not doing well, then the governor's budget is going to struggle. Most of this, and I typed this a week ago, so I get to correct it already. Most of the stock market is well above pre-COVID levels, but have not returned to the 2022 peak, which changed today because the Dow Jones just hit a record high today. Because the Federal Reserve said they are going to try to have 3 rate cuts next year to bring interest rates down, and 500-point bump one day, and we now have a new high in the stock markets. That is very, very good for California, because that means people in Silicon Valley, which are 7 of the top 10 stocks that made money this previous year, will result in. But when we're talking about the deficit that the state has right now, it's from 2022. So that was a bad year. Those are the receipts we just got in. 2023, you're going to start to see all of those things come in, but it's not going to be until the 24-year budget. So we've got a little bit of time to get from that point to where we're at, and we have to get through that. Home builder sentiment is still low because income interest rates are still high, and we're hoping those are going to come down. That was good news from the Federal Reserve today, that they're looking at potentially lowering interest rates in the future, which would actually trigger some of that home builder sentiment. We have a lot of building and construction that started in Merced, and it's not going as fast as it was about a year and a half ago. Hopefully interest rates coming down will start to spark that a little bit as well. And again, inflation is trending down. The soft landing versus recession is looking much more like we probably saw the roughest part already, hopefully, which means going forward we're starting to see us come out of that a little bit, especially usually when interest rates start to come down a little bit, you do see the economy start to pick up a bit. So 22 tax receipts, though, were down $26 billion in 1 year. It's $65 billion over 3 years. And the government always does, the state does a 3-year budget, but it's $26 billion less than what they were expecting. So we are looking for the January 10th budget to see how the governor is going to do that. We are in much better position for next year than we were in the last recession and area of downturn in the state of California. There are much heftier reserves in the regular state budget. There is a very large reserve in the education budget at the state level that they can tap into. And you also have them, for the last couple of years, not spending all of the Prop 98 money on ongoing things. They used it for one-time money. So if you stop spending that one-time money, it brings you a little bit closer to what you actually had to give out under Prop 98. So it's going to be interesting to see that January 10th. Education is probably not going to look as bad as the rest of the state budget when they do all of those things that they've been able to put into place. And a lot of things that they might be cutting are one-time funds or new projects that have not actually been funded yet. And a lot of those are elementary school in nature and aren't going to impact us at all. They have to do with TK, facility construction, after-school programs that they gave a lot of money to elementary schools to run after-school programs. They couldn't spend it all, so a lot of it's still sitting there. That's where they're going to be able to get a lot of those cuts. we're probably going to have a little bit of a downturn in education for next year on the budget, but it's probably not going to be as bad as the rest of the budget for the state of California. So this is the one I've shown before, and I will show it over and over. This has our enrollment, and you can see that our enrollment was on an upward trend. We did have a slight downward dip this year. We're thinking that there probably will be another dip probably into next year, but then it floats within a little bit of a band here for about the next 8 years if you look at feeder school data. So these gray lines are based on the actual enrollment from CBEDS for our feeder schools going down to the kindergarten level. So we can do all of those. We can predict all of those and where we're going to go out, and it does stay within this band. We used to have 94.5% was what we thought we would get on ADA because we don't get paid by enrollment. We get paid for average daily attendance. So you would see that we would have gone up and then come back down, and then we would level off, which is our revenues. But the green line you see is right here, and it actually leveled off this year. So even though we went down in enrollment, we're really not expecting to see a decrease in revenues this year because it's not enrollment we get paid on ADA. And even though enrollment came down a little bit, our attendance rate has actually gone up a little bit. So that offset those losses, and we're pretty much going to stay where we were last year. So that's good and bad. So you get the good and bad. So some first interim note budget assumptions. The budget, again, is established on data that has previously been out, so previous year's ADA. So when you see the budget go out, it uses the ADA from the previous year, and it just holds that out. That's fine for us this year. Usually when you're going up, that's really good news because then you get a little bit more money than you thought you were going to be. In a declining enrollment, which the state is in, you can't do that because if each year you're getting less money because your ADA goes down, that's a problem. The fact that our enrollment and ADA still continue to meet means that it's not going to be an issue for us. The governor's budget in COLA, I'm going to get to here in just a second. Enrollment is down again for us, but revenues will stay flat. This is the one everybody's going to look at and everybody wants to see when the governor's budget comes out in January. COLA was projected to be 3.94% for 24-25 and 3.29% 25-26. The current estimate from the Legislative Analyst Office is 1.27 for 24-25 and 1%, around 1% for 25-26. So we will see if that's what actually makes it into the governor's budget. We'll know about January 10th on where that is. But the LAO is usually pretty close. The indicator that we use is not actually inflation. It's a price inflator, deflator that's done on just government services, so it doesn't include things like rent and other things that might affect an individual. And they have 6 of the 7 data points that they need to make that already up. So they know the number, they're pretty close. That one last one will come in before the governor's budget, and it's probably going to be in that 1.27 range. STRS is holding at 19.10%. PERS is going to go up a little bit in the next 3 years, 26.6, 27, then 28. So that will increase our costs.
Dr. Weimer?
Yes.
Percent of what?
Percent of their salary, what they get paid. So for a STRS, you pay 19.1% of a teacher's salary. We have to pay that 19.1% into the retirement plan. And for PERS, we pay 26.68% next year of their salary in addition to their salary, into the retirement. So 24-25 projected budget includes COLA and increased salary because we already have contracts that are settled. 25-26 only includes the revenues, not any increase in salary because those negotiations are not settled, but they're also not on the right, what's going to be the right COLA numbers. They're going to be based on the COLA numbers that were in the governor's budget that we already have, so they're going to be based back on the 3.94 and the 3.29. We know it's not going to be those, but that's what's in the governor's budget, so that's what we have to use for our projections. We do have multiple scenarios. So we know what it is if it's 1.27, we know what it is if it's 1, we know what it is if it's 2.5. So we're looking at these as much as we look at what we have to turn in because we already know that that's going to change as soon as January, and we know where we're going to be at based on those. And so when I go through a few, I can show you where we'll be at if we do the 1.27. And then again, we have the 1.5% step and column that obviously goes up every year automatically. And then we have the PARS retirement that we will be looking at to see how that impacts going forward. Federal one-time funds will be expended by the end of 23-24. We do have some state one-time funds then for 24, 25, and 25, 26 that will help us offset any type of issues that we have to cover for the next couple of years. So we're looking at making sure that we have a very balanced budget and we're ready to go by the 26-27 year when we don't have any one-time funds to offset what it is. We're already making sure we know what that number is. We're looking at the multi-year projections. We will be making any types of cuts or movement that we can as we get there, so there is not some big shock in 25, 26 where we all of a sudden have to cut 10% of our budget. That's not going to happen. So the expectations, though, for 26, 27, the district will be able to maintain all the services that are provided by our district staff with some minor adjustments based on enrollment. Our enrollment went down, so we do staff based on enrollment. So since we have fewer students, we will be giving out fewer sections next year because that's how we give those allocations out. We will make a few of those adjustments. We have adjustments that are going to happen through PARS as well. And then the district will not be able to make additional contributions to funds like deferred maintenance, transportation upgrades, or facility projects to the extent that we've been doing recently when we hit that 26, 27 level. Some things that are just out there on the radar that we know are topics that we're going to have to tackle here pretty quickly. The state of California has mandated the transition to electric vehicles. We are already in the middle of that. We are in a good position right now where we have replaced a lot of our vehicles over the last couple of years. We're going to be able to do this on our timeline. We're not going to be, scrambling to put something together in 6 months and trying to figure that out. We've got time to get from point A to point B, but it's here, and the time to start planning for that and to start moving in that direction is one that's on our radar right now. Bus companies are no longer selling diesel buses in California. So they stopped making them. They're not even in production. Starting in 2024, which is 3 weeks from now, 1/2 of any new vehicle purchase, sorry, I said that. 1/2 of all new vehicle purchases have to be EVs. So for every truck that we buy that's a diesel, if they'll sell us one, you have to buy an EV truck. They're not there yet. So their answer will be, then you don't buy the diesel truck because you can't buy the EV truck. And that starts in January. So we do have that. Again, luckily we've been preparing for this for a couple of years. Our fleets are in pretty good shape and pretty good place where we're going to be able to do this transition on our timeline. We do not. Yes. That's one of those things where I'm talking about we get to do this on our timeline. One of the things is we are probably going to be looking at putting them one on each campus out on the front on the solar panels, and then probably one in the back for each campus. But then we're also looking at doing our biggest push with the new business park property where we'll be able to put the new infrastructure in there. We'll be working on getting grants and working with a wide variety of different groups to be able to get infrastructure out there as we finish that project up. So that's probably where we'll see the majority of it. But we do have to have some on our campuses as well. We can't even replace asphalt. You can't repave a parking lot starting in 2024 without putting in an EV station on your campuses. So we're moving forward. We're going to do it on an orderly process, but it's going to take us about a year to get the process down. But we'll be in a good place to be able to do that. We're not in a rush. Deferred maintenance, things like HVACs, roofs, electrical. We're outlining and pricing the replacement plans. We've been able to do a lot of that. We want to make sure we have a good plan going forward, that those things continue to get updated on a regular basis so you're not always fixing things when they break. It's not bad necessarily on a pencil sharpener or something like that, but when you're replacing a roof because it broke, that's a bad thing. When you're replacing an HVAC system like this one, once it breaks, that's a bad thing. We want to be able to stay on top of those things and stay ahead of them before they break and replace them. And then also on facilities, we do have developer fees, so we're going to start to be more creative in our uses of those and be able to do some of the expansions on our campuses with those funds. We have money in the East Merced project. We have a little bit of money left in Measure M. Our valuation probably stagnated over the last year as growth stopped, but as interest rates come down, if growth continues again, we'll be able to access a little bit more of that Measure M bond because there's about $12 million left that we could access if we continue to get some growth and valuation in the district, in the county, before we reach the maximum amount we're allowed on Measure M. And so at that point, once we've used that, if we wanted anything else, we'd have to do a new measure. But we do have a little bit we can still get out of that. And we have submitted for state match. So we have submitted over $40 million for state match. If they're not in much shape to actually start paying that next year, but once they start getting funds back or pass a bond to get money back into that program, that money will come back to us to be able to use for facilities. So that was a lot. Questions on that part before we go into the normal slides?
I have a question. You said you've been looking and preparing for transitioning to electric.
Going to be looking at and preparing for it.
Okay, got it.
Not have.
All right, so then do we know how far a bus will go?
Not far enough.
I'm not gonna let him. I'm not gonna let him do it. I'm gonna turn his mic off. It would be able to do a route, the ability to do a morning and afternoon route without doing any type of things in the morning. I mean, in between, maybe. The problem is most of our buses don't sit there in the middle of the day. They're going over to Castle. They're taking kids to Yosemite. They're doing a wide variety of things. It would definitely not get you to a Santa Cruz Band Festival and back. It would not get you to a Sacramento football game and back. It would not get you most likely to a Fresno one and back. My car barely does that. My electric car barely does that. A bus would not do that. So they know that in California. They've actually had that conversation out loud, that they know that the buses and stuff do not have it here. They're crossing their finger that by making it a requirement, that's going to improve very quickly. We'll see if that actually happens. But we are in the process of starting the planning. We have not started yet. We've got a couple of years to put that together. I'm sure I know, but not to mention the fact that we probably don't have a single person right now who is trained to be a mechanic on an electric vehicle.
Yeah, depending on the range of electric, with home to school, school to home, probably you could do it. The average route is probably 50, 60 miles a day for just that. But then there's activities during the day. You're doing extra shuttles. And then for sure, if you add a trip to Los Banos, like you said, Sacramento, Fresno, you're never going to make. I've heard the ranges are 125 to 300, so it's probably more like 80 in real life.
And then one of the downsides here, which again, as everybody starts to do this, there'll be a lot more conversations about how this works. But the only way in which an EV program is cheaper for you than a diesel program is if you're able to do the chargings overnight on a slower charge. Well, if I take a bus over to Santa Cruz, I need that Santa Cruz to have a fast charger that I can charge in an hour to be able to get home. Well, nobody's going to put those in because that doesn't save you any money. And so everybody's going to put the slower chargers in and plan on charging overnight. That doesn't help you as a visitor. That only helps you with your home to school route. So there's a whole lot of things that are going to become discussions really quickly as these mandates start to go into effect. I will tell you that is their purpose of putting these dates out there. They are forcing everybody to have these conversations and to start going and having the conversations. The problem is, will the technology move as fast as the conversations will? And I'm pretty sure the answer to that is no. Any other questions on that? So this will bring us to the traditional slides that we're used to, that we see every time with the budget and with the budget updates. Again, you do see that we have the ADA. That number is up. Again, you can see that our ADA is up a little bit. That's an estimate. I'm not sure that's where we're actually going to come in yet this year, but it's going to be around there. But you're going to see that we don't lose money because of our lower enrollment this year, because we did get more of an attendance bump in our attendance rate. Kids are coming to school at a better rate. So we do have LCFF component, which is $172 million, which is the general state fund. We did have the 8.22% COLA. It does assume for P2 ADA of 10.316. P2 was from last year, so that is what we had at the end of last year. We are running about 10.330 right now in our regular programs, and then we have a few other programs that add on it, so we're a little bit higher than last year, but things always slide down a little bit as you get into the spring. This is the highest time of the year, and then it shrinks a little bit. But we're looking to be at least a little bit level or maybe just a little bit higher. With the federal income and other state income, we look at 223 million as our total. Now, a lot of that is federal income or other state income that carried over from the previous year because they make us take it out and then put it back in, and it's the one-time funds. So we don't really have an annual budget of 223 million. That includes those one-time funds that we're still going to be spending down the federal money this year and the state money over the next year and a half. It does include a 1.5 step and column, the 8.2% salary increase from this year, which matched the COLA. And then we have transfers to each of those areas where we're doing our different projects. And again, that's just the total for all of the expenses. This is the difference from the adopted budget to the first interim. And again, it's the revenues going up a little bit because of the attendance for ADA, and then a lot of it is the carryover, the one-time funds. Ending balance and components. We'll get back to that. So 25-26, this is again, this is using that 3.2% COLA rate, and you look out at the 25-26 year, which is pretty much the last year that we're going to have one-time funds. You do see that we're at $33 million as our ending balance for that particular year. But as we put in some of the other numbers, if I use the 1.27 COLA, which would then turn into the 1.27% raise, and then a 1% COLA and a 1% raise in the year after that, that 25-26 ending balance would be $31 million. So if we do the adjustments on what we think it's going to be versus what the state budget currently says it is, we'd be about $2.2 million lower than where we are on that one, which is still well within the range where we want to be. This just gives you what the difference would be from 24-25 and 25-26 on the LCFF funding. And then you see the STRS rate starting to level off, but the PERS rate does still go up for about 3 years. Student Activity Fund, we just at the end of the year, we have to take the SB funds, put it in our bank, and then give it right back to them. So that's all that is. Adult Education comes from the consortium. They give us the money. Adult School spends it. Child Development Center is the center that we have over on East Campus. Cafeteria services, most of that comes from the federal money that we get for reimbursements for meals. Pupil transportation, we do have a $840,000 in buses, or excuse me, the $2.3 million in buses. So we do have buses on order. We got them in time. We're waiting for them. When they come in, we have that money to spend. We do still have money in the transportation department to be able to do any other types of increases if we need to. If we need to buy a couple of buses so that we can see what they're like and be able to do some maintenance on them and learn how to work on those things, we've got some money in that facility, in that fund to be able to handle that project.
If we're not able to purchase buses before the end of the year, diesel buses, or are these not diesel buses?
Those are diesel buses. They're already purchased. The contract's already signed. We're ready to actually make the payment. We're not sure they're going to get to us in time, but we're pretty much before the regulations take place in January.
Thank you.
Deferred maintenance, we do have money in there. Those are for HVACs and roofs and those types of repairs. The building fund, that's the bond fund, and it says an ending balance of 105, but that will probably all be gone because we're at a time period of about 3 years, and you're supposed to spend bond fund monies fairly quickly. So those are the bond projects for Measure In. We will be getting rid of most of that. That is the finishing up of the pools and beginning of the stadiums. Developer fees, we do have the $9.5 million. We're going to be using those things. That's what we use for portables right now. We're going to expand that into possibly adding some additional restrooms and a variety of other things on our campuses, and we can use that money for those types of expansions. School facility fund, there's not much left there. The other one is the one that we've been putting money aside in, which is where we're going to finish, which also had the brick monies in. That one will finish. The brick monies is going to be finished. The pools will be finished. The Livingston track is finished. That also will include the beginning of the stadium expenses. And so then you'll have the money that's there to be able to finish those stadium expenses.
Dr. Weimer, bricks money, you're talking about Capitan High School?
Yeah, it's still there. There's still a few things that haven't been paid yet, so it's still a little bit in the books there. But that's where that part of that was from. Special reserves, other than capital outlay, Fund 17 is our reserve for economic uncertainties. So that's where we have our 10%. Part of it's there, part of it's in the general fund, but that's all of our reserves. And then Fund 20 is where we will be paying for the PARs, and there will be enough money in there to be able to do another one if we decide that we need one 2 or 3 years down the road. Once we see the impact that this PARs has on our general fund, we see what the governor's budget has for us in January. We still have the ability to be able to do another one of those in the future if we need to bring our general fund annual budget down, expenses down. And this one is the county money. We have to put it in there. We don't have a choice. We don't get to use it. We don't get to spend it. They just kind of wave it in front of us and have to put it in our report. We can pay our bills for 3 years, and we are not in jeopardy of paying our bills for 3 years. We can do it with no problem. So the superintendent does recommend that the board approve the positive certification, adopt the revisions as noted in the attachments, and adopt or accept the criteria standards, which are also there in.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the first interim report.
Second?
I second that motion.
Any questions, further discussion? Call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. Mr. Nicholson.
Good evening. We are here tonight seeking ratification of the 2022-23 school year contract between CSEA Chapter 252 and the Merced Union High School District. Negotiators reached a tentative agreement on October 10th, 2023. The tentative agreement was presented to the CSEA chapter membership and was ratified on November 14th. And the parties agreed to settle ongoing labor negotiations for the 22-23 school year as follows. So everything is status quo except for we made adjustments to the evaluation form for classified employees. Probationary classified employees have milestones that they have to be evaluated three times within the first 6 months of their employment. And so we made little check boxes in the top right corner to check off the second month, fourth month, and sixth month on the form so that the form matches our contract language. And we also agreed upon the transportation MOU. And the big thing, the big change in there is that we do have a committee to look at the trip selection software. So the district will select 3 people, the chapter will select 3 people, and they're going to meet and review some of those, our current process and software options to kind of speak to what Kelly was talking about earlier. So our superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees ratify the agreement for the 22-23 school year.
We have a speaker card. Heather Dama. Thank you for your patience and waiting to speak.
Thank you for letting me speak to you, President Ham and Mr. Peterson and the school board. It's about the MOU whether to approve it or not. Asking you to please not approve it, not approve it. Our bus drivers, we didn't have a lot that came to support, but the majority of us are not in agreement with it. I know it got passed. It has a lot of gray areas and a lot of loopholes when you read it. And how our department is functioning right now regarding our home to school and our field trips, this would actually have a domino effect. It would cost the school district more money. It would create problems with assigning the field trips, and it would also take money away from our bus drivers. The way the wording is written, it could actually pose a problem this year coming up on how we transport using the field trip system, and we're transporting our students to their activities, whether it's wrestling or their soccer or their sports, to the band reviews, to at the end of the school year, whenever we're taking the kids to, the students to their end of school year trips and graduation. The wording would actually require that we might have to outsource, not keep our drivers for the field trips in-house, but we would have to use a lot more charters. And so there's a lot of little loopholes on how we operate. So again, it does have that little bit of information too about the software. That's a very interesting clause in there because it has to do with the routing. We have a routing program already for our home to school, which is local. But when you get into software routing for field trips, it's very complicated. There is some, it's very pricey, it's very expensive, and there are some programs that sell extensions or the software companies make it for where you're going. Like, let's for instance say San Francisco or far away. And so that gets really complicated because there's not just a one size fits all, because it really comes back to the bus drivers and them being trained and being knowledgeable. For instance, just an example, I'm in San Francisco, I might have to change my direction 3 or 4 times to keep the kids safe, and that whatever is within time restraints. So again, I ask you to look at it, but don't approve it tonight. Let it go back to the where we can start working on it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Nicholson?
May I?
Please.
Mrs. Kennedy, what do you want us to do tonight with this? I don't think there's any question about that. I think we all did that. I think the question is, are we absolutely positive this is what is best for transportation?
I had spoke before about mechanics doing the trips and things. What the drivers pointed out was that we made sure that we wrote it in so that it would benefit the district, so the drivers would have to finish their routes before they could take any field trips. But in reality, that's not possible. what would be appropriate is, another part that we wrote in is that mechanics and the office staff can step in to assist as needed. What would be more appropriate is if these bus drivers who are trained and qualified to drive our students, if they had access to drive them to San Francisco and a mechanic stepped in and assisted to finish their route. The way that it's written is that the route has to be completed before they can do a field trip. That's not in the best interest of the safety of the students. What we have found is that we have increased the population of white fleet, and what we're finding is some areas, because the drivers aren't available, the schools are asking, please just give me 3 vans. The problem with that is we have wonderful coaches, but we do have some coaches that are maybe a bit younger. And when you're 23, 24, and you got a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds in the back, they're not professionally trained drivers. They're good at getting it there, but it would be more appropriate and in the safety of the students to allow the bus drivers to be bus drivers. And if we do need the assistance with the mechanics, to allow them to finish the routes so the bus drivers can get our students to and from safely.
Can we make this MOU better with more time?
100%.
Can we table it tonight? Will everyone be happy with that?
Well, we've already passed it on our end.
I know.
And what would have to happen is it not go through on your end so that we can open it back up to have negotiations again. And we do feel that that would be the appropriate step for both parties.
Okay. And you're on the record, you know, there are legal issues around this. So we need you on the record in front of everyone that we're going to do this.
Absolutely. Just understand, like I said before, both parties went into it in good faith.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because we had that time frame, it's a good and a bad that we had that extra time in the middle, that we did have very vocal bus drivers who came forward and said this is simply not in the best interest. The reality of it is a lot of money would be wasted, or we could use that money to improve or do hiring bonuses or increase the pay or something to draw more bus drivers in. There's no point in buying more buses if you don't have bus drivers to drive the buses. So there are things absolutely 100% that could be improved. So that's where we stand. We never would we ever pass something and then go back and tell our members speak on this. They can tell you that we never came to them. And every time they asked, it was, I'm sorry, we negotiated in good faith. But the reality is I'm answering a question, and there is absolutely improvement that could be made. And this is where I now encourage, and I know our transportation department knows the importance of a person from transportation being on part of our negotiations team.
Okay.
Because we did the best that we could with the situation that we were in.
Thank you. Appreciate
you.
the feedback. Mrs. Ham, with that in mind, I changed my recommendation to that we do not pass this MOU tonight.
May I ask one question here real quickly and see if Kelly's the contract negotiations and the MOU are completely different items. You could pass the contract negotiations and settle the contract, which has some legal updates in it, and not pass the MOU.
Table
the MOU.
Table the MOU.
Yeah.
We would think that that's the appropriate way to do it, and that will also give us time to meet, to have conversations about the trip software. We can bring all of that together again. The only thing that we do ask is in the meantime that our director follow the MOU that is in place right now. It did sunshine, but we can move forward with what's in place so that at least they have something.
So tabling it gets you to where you need to be.
Absolutely.
All right.
Tabling the MOU part.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, it's not taking it to a vote, it's tabling it, and then it could come back either revised or it comes back again to us as is, and there's action taken then.
The contract language will not. The MOU part would.
Yes, right.
Correct.
So
my
we're moving
question,
on.
okay.
Right?
Yeah,
We're
we-
just going to move past this. There's no vote to be taken.
Well, no,
Wait.
we're separating them.
I think we have to do a motion to accept the ratification of the 22-23 contract with caveat, can't think of what I want to say.
And table the
Table.
MOU.
Table the
Thank you.
MOU.
I'm working on my motion real quick. Thank you.
Thank you for a well-said motion.
Okay, want to go with that one? Okay, so I want to make a motion to accept the ratification of the 22-23 CSEA contract and to table the MOU for the Transportation Department.
Is there a second?
Hold that.
I'm holding.
Oh,
Is it 22, 23, or 23, 24?
I'm reading what I'm reading off the.
22, 23.
22,
Did I
23.
say-
Got it.
Yeah, it did say 22-23,
Yep.
right? Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say I'm glad that we're doing it this way.
100%.
So thank you
Yeah.
to
Thank-
both the union and Mr. Peterson.
Yep, agreed. Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy, for your honesty, and thank you for the folks that came to speak up and appreciate people working together collaboratively to figure out what's best in everybody's interests. So thank you. Okay, Mr. Nicholson, you're back up.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We've been here a long time tonight. All right, call for the vote. Thank you.
We are in overtime.
Anybody get it?
We haven't gotten it, no.
Yeah.
Sure, roll
Verbal.
call vote.
Aye.
Mr. Valdez, Mrs. Jarasinga,
Aye.
Mrs. Pickle,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye, 5-0. Thank you, everyone. All right, now, Mr. Nicholson, you're back up.
Thank you. We are here seeking approval for an update to the supplementary salary schedule for the 23-24 school year. The salary schedule will now reflect a new minimum wage hourly rate of $16 per hour. And that affects when we hire college students to be like avid tutors or high school students to be our cashiers and things. So the superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees approve the new supplemental salary schedule.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the supplemental salary schedule for 23-24 school year.
Was there a second?
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. And that passes unanimously. Mr. Nicholson again.
All right. So we are here seeking approval or seeking that the board approve or ratify the CSEA MOU concerning the changes to update the program assistant job description to student support technician. So parties shared an interest in updating the program assistant job description, wage, and title of the position to better reflect the current job duties performed by the position. So we met, negotiated the decision effects and impact of these changes. There was a new salary range. Classification will change, so the title of the position. And there was a change in duties. So the superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees ratifies the MOU and new job description.
Was there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. And that passes 5-0. Our last action item. This one's on me. The board is being asked to approve an 11th addendum to Superintendent Alan Peterson's employment agreement. It is proposed that Superintendent Peterson receive a 5% salary increase retroactive to July 1, 23. same as that received by other certificated management employees. Superintendent Peterson's base salary for 23-24 shall therefore be $293,000 and $293,087. Working on my math. In addition, per the superintendent's existing contract, he receives a 3% step increase to base salary if he receives a satisfactory or better performance evaluation. The board has completed Superintendent Peterson's evaluation for the 22-23 school year and determined that he is eligible for the 3% step increase, which shall be effective July 1, 24, at which time his base salary will be $301,880. It is recommended by the board president that the governing board approve this 11th addendum to Superintendent Alan Peterson's contract of employment, which complies with the board's obligations pursuant to his contract of employment. Is there a motion to approve?
Did you read the statement, Mrs. Ham?
Yes, I did.
I'll make the motion to approve the 11th addendum to Superintendent Peterson's contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further question or discussions? And call for the vote. And that passes 4-1. With that, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
I will make this short and sweet, President Ham. I just want to share a conversation that I had at our UC Davis. It's UC Davis on Friday. It's sort of a think tank where approximately 15 superintendents talk through various issues that the majority of us are handling. And I volunteered to share our goal process. And as we talked, I got more and more questions about, wait a minute, how do you accomplish 3 or 4 major district-wide things in a year? And my point in sharing that with you is that we've got amazing people working for us. That's how those things get done. That's how you see improvements in the various data sets that you've seen in the discussion tonight. It happens because of relationships with CSEA like we just did tonight. It happens with DTA, who we talk with constantly. So I just want to point out that it's not this easy everywhere. And I'm super proud of our folks, super proud of you too. I thank you for the vote of confidence, and I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thank you for a great first semester this year.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to trustee communications information, future agenda items. We'll start with you, Mr. Coleman.
Thank you. I did a little bit of traveling between last meeting and this one. Had a great opportunity to watch our girls water polo team from Buhat Colony go through, win a section championship, and then move through the NorCal regionals to the championship game. Came up a little short, but they had a great game and very impressed with their coaches and their players as well. Got to go over to Atwater last night to the Ag Advisory meeting. They're doing great things over there at Atwater in that Ag department. And got to watch a little bit of basketball last night as well. One question I've got, maybe this might be for Mandy, Mrs. Ballinger, real quick. Is it possible we can change college and career to just career?
Well, anything is possible, but our measurement from the state of California is a college and career ready indicator. That's kind of where the evolution of college and career came from. I think at the very least, we need some messaging that it's not college or career, and that it's not college is better than career, it's college and career. I think a lot of times people still think of college as four-year university college, but there are so many other opportunities for our students related to college, not just our students, but our communities related to college, where you can get certifications to help improve your career opportunities. So anything is possible.
Sure.
But that's why I think that those two should stay together. And if you're talking about like in our LCAP goals, we
Yeah.
might want to reconsider instead of college and career ready, maybe future ready, life ready, post-secondary ready, something along those lines, so that we can keep college and career ready together for that indicator and those other opportunities.
Yeah, I appreciate that because, again, we've all talked about our personal children, and my son is one that, went to Merced College to go into auto mechanics. He's not, that was his college, that was his goal, but it's really a career goal. So I was just thinking about that. That's all. Thank you, Mrs. Ballinger. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mrs. Pickle?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Ham. Attended the CSBA conference, as did several of us. It was great. It's always good to get together in that environment. And there were some great sessions, and I think some of that is spilling over to what we're going to see here in our goals. Recently attended Christmas Carol put on by Atwater and BUHAC, and of course that was absolutely fantastic as usual. And kudos to all those that participated into those programs. They really do a fantastic job. Put in an incredible amount of time and effort, and really put on a great production. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Jayasinga?
Over the last few weeks, attended a parent workshop that was very well attended at El Capitan. It was great to see a turnout by parents with a lot of good questions. Over the next couple of weeks, looking forward to attending the holiday performances by the various musical ensembles in different schools. I would like to put a plug in for the Merced Union High School District's orchestra performance next Tuesday, and that's going to be at UHAC, so they always put on a good show. I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a fantastic 2024. Thank you.
Mr. Valadez?
Just want to thank everyone who made it out here, even those that left already. And of course, the staff that always stays till the end, even if they make you stay. But thank you all. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. I was also able to attend CSBA, the California School Board Association Conference, and it's a great way for us to get refreshed, reinvigorated, a lot of great ideas. And so, as Tiffany said, I think we spoke to some of those tonight and appreciate already that incorporation into some of our goals. I want to thank you, Superintendent Peterson, for always being forward-thinking and developing relationships across the district so that we can advance and further and be hyper-functional. So thank you. One of the things we do need to do, and I'd like to request for our January meeting, is a board evaluation. Okay. And other than that, I would love for us to evaluate substitute bus driver pay. They have to have a special license, and I think that would probably help in some of this, and appreciate the comments by Mr. Haven.
$21.93 is the sub rate.
Like the others, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Everybody enjoy some time off and time with family. We are adjourned at, oh my gosh.
1 second.
Sorry.
With regard to the board evaluation, and can I assume you want to do protocol review with that?
Yes, please.
Can I suggest we do that on a separate night rather than on the regular meeting?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get back to you on the
Yeah. Okay.
options.
Okay. And with that, we will